The planning board meeting of Monday, December 6th, 2021. This evening we have all 5 members of the planning board present, 4 of us in person, and Bob is dialed in from Qatar, where he is going to be for the next several months. So as we have done the last few times we've convened, all votes will be taken via roll call this evening. We also have Paul Starrett from Town Engineering and Joe Janowitz, the town planner, with us to keep us on track and moving. And so we have a pretty full agenda, so we will do our best to be expedient in our discussions and keep the conversation moving tonight. As we always do, we start with open forum. Joe, anything from town for open forum?
No, nothing at this time.
No? Paul, anything from engineering? No? Anything from the board for open forum?
No, sir.
Bob?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
All right. We move right along past open forum and we get into our public hearing items. The first public hearing item is PB 2136, site plan review, modification to a site plan review to allow for expanded use at the millworks into buildings 13 and 16, and that is at 22 Town Farm Road. Is the applicant with us this evening? Good evening.
Good evening.
And happy holidays.
Happy holidays. For the record, my name is Paul Alphin. I represent 22 Town Farm Road, LLC. Chris Yule will probably arrive any minute. This is an application for a modification of a site plan approval that was previously issued in 2018 for the property at 22 Town Farm Road. The original applications were filed because of the change in use of buildings 17 and 18 of the Abbott Mill Courier Printing Complex to create the millworks. In the intervening time period, the availability of indoor recreational facilities has become an integral asset to the community, and interest in the facility continues to grow. For example, Chris got some records regarding how the property has been used by Westford residents alone, and he calculates that approximately 4,200 Westford residents have used this facility in the past year. If you want to take one and pass it on versus me going and handing out to everybody in order to maintain social distancing, that would be appreciated. This is a application just for a change of use. There are no material changes proposed for the site. I will say that there's one change to the site which was necessitated by the discussion we didn't have at the last meeting. The board asked us to get together with the public safety officials to talk about any outstanding issues that may have arisen as regard to the initial site plan modification. We met here with representatives from the police department, the fire department, the planning department, and the building department. The building department was concerned about egress to the far end of the complex, and we went out to the site. We talked about the best way to handle the egress to make sure that it was handicapped accessible. Over the weekend, a new paved sidewalk was installed from one of the far side buildings out to the parking lot to accommodate that concern. So that's it in terms of the exterior changes to the facility. There has been the cutting of landscaping around the back in order to improve the egress around the back, which was a prior concern of the building department, but that's pretty much it. There's no changes proposed in the parking lot, with some minor exceptions. One of the other things that we did is we had the fire department was kind enough to come out and bring the ladder truck and make sure the ladder truck could traverse the property and be able to turn around with a minimum of fuss. There'll be a couple of parking spaces which will be eliminated as a consequence of that. They also asked for some modifications to the identification of the fire lane and to improve the striping for the crosswalks to make it that much clearer where the sidewalk is, where the no parking areas are, and where the fire lanes are. And if the planning board approves the plan, those changes will be implemented. The prior use of the property included 300-plus employees who were operating at 16 to 24 hours a day, and there are 400 existing spaces with 24-foot and 30-foot wide traveled ways. There's a 10-inch water main servicing the building. All buildings are fully sprinkled and alarmed. The septic disposal has been, is operating properly, and there is pedestrian access to Abbott Mill and Forge Village, and also vehicular access to Town Farm Road. The applicant recently upgraded all building and site lighting with LED lights and installed additional roadway and parking lot light fixtures on half the light poles. From your staff report, apparently there is a concern regarding a building light on the rear of the building that's impacting, I think, residents on Pershing Road. If we can identify that, that is not a light that my client installed. It came with the Courier building, and we can figure that out. We could put a shield on that, or relocate that, or turn it off or something. But we just need to figure out which one it is that's troubling. We have a variance decision from 2007, which identified each of the uses we have here is now being permitted in this, on this industrial property. There was a condition in the 2018 site plan modification decision that imposed a 12-month review of the parking and loading situation, and if warranted by the Westford Police Department, that review would occur. And no such review was warranted, apparently, by the police department in the intervening period. So, notwithstanding that every now and then it does get busy, they change their practices from time to time as needed in order to keep the traffic under control. It's a little bit difficult to control people's disregard of no parking signs and fire lane signs, but they've increased the amount of staffing there in an attempt to prevent that stuff from happening. And I think with the restriping of the fire lane and the no parking areas and the crosswalk, that things will even get better. We'll continue to improve, and our client's on it. He submitted a modified plan. I appreciate the comments in the staff report that there should be an identification of those items which are currently existing and which are proposed, and that's a good idea, and he should do that. And but other than that, it's just a change of use, site plan modification to eliminate the portions of the building that were being used by the Courier Corporation associated with the book business, and expand the indoor recreation to the additional parts of the building. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and unfortunately, notwithstanding my attempt at a filibuster, Chris still isn't here, so I'll do my best to make things up as we go.
We bust your filibuster.
Yes. Well, appreciate the overview. Thank you for walking us through what's been done. So, Joe, is there any update from town staff before we, as a board, deliberate here?
Sure. So as Attorney Alton alluded to, Fire Department did bring Tower 1 engine out to the site, performed a variety of turning movements, and even went straight through to go towards Abbott Mill to see what movements they could make over there. A couple parking spaces, as indicated on the updated site plan, are indicated now to be removed or were switched from to parallel parking spaces. Yep. There are a couple, I think, additional items out there from the fire department still that might just need some tweaking on an updated plan. For instance, and I'll zoom in here. Oops, it's jumping on me. So there's some areas that were indicated as either a drop-off or a fire lane in these updated kind of square areas. And I think what the fire department would like to have is at the main entrance of the facility is just have this as a fire lane, is not as a drop-off. In exchange, just having these areas by kind of this large grass area here is just drop-off and not fire lane. That way it's clear where cars are to be versus where fire trucks are to be. And then same thing over here, this would just be fire lane, not a drop-off area.
Which one? Oh, that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So up in this area here, that this would just be fire lane, and this area would just be fire lane. versus just a drop off here and just drop off here. And then additionally, I think there was some concern around this corner here with the location of a drop-off and a fire lane and a crosswalk. So continuing to work with town staff on what a final condition can look like here, especially with how it comes out right into a drive aisle, without a lot of pedestrian safety accommodation there. So those were a couple items here. Again, versus what's existing out there, what's proposed out there. The handicap parking is shown on the plan here, so I'm imagining that's a proposed condition. The crosswalks on here, there's no size indicated. They should be 6 feet wide. Current conditions, they didn't appear to be, so some updates there would be needed. So there's a few still things kind of lingering out there, but I think some progress has been made based on discussions with the applicant, with a variety of departments, and we're happy to continue to do that. And then as plans get updated, they just need to be stamped by a professional who's able to do that.
Right. Right. Thank you for the overview, Joe.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I don't know, did you have anything to add to
No,
that?
we met on site with the aforementioned departments and support whatever efforts our fire department wants to make to combat a fire if they needed to.
Yep, yep. Okay, so before we go into just kind of, I go around the board, I've been sort of keeping a punch list in my head, and of course, all the conversation of town staff's continued involvement does bring back to the surface that we do need to discuss the fee for this application, which we should probably get to tonight. But the punch list that I had in my head prior to the last time you guys came before us, when we heard about some other health and safety issues inside the building, was signage and the striping in the lot and the fact that the plans were not signed. Like those were the three items that were in my mind as open and to do, right? And then I think when we heard from you guys last time, we sort of added ADA accessible egress from the building, the light in the back that's kind of causing some light intrusion to the neighbors behind the property. And I don't know if another one was added. Oh, and I guess like cleaning up the actual egress areas, because there was I think there was a locked door and some other stuff in front of one. So by my list, I think we've cleaned up the egress. We've gotten the fire truck too. The fire truck went through, so that's good. You said you have the ADA access now. The sidewalk was laid, but that still leaves some things outstanding, which is the striping, the signage, and the stamped plans. Is that as far as you know? Without
That's right, they're proposed, but this is part of the site plan approval process. If the planning board thinks that that's where they should be, then yes, the plans will be updated and submitted, absolutely.
Right. I guess in my head, I'm feeling like those were part of the initial site plan review
Well,
process.
things have changed, actually, as a consequence of the experience. Everyone sort of took a fresh look at it. The fire department and the building department took a fresh look at things.
Yep.
So it might be a little bit different than what was previously approved, isn't that right?
I mean, there were a number of site visits that were conducted by the fire department and the building department, as well as engineering and planning staff.
Yep.
And then to your point, Mr. Chairman, lighting was mentioned before, looking at potentially some shields on some lights along the
Yep.
back of the property.
Yep.
Noise was brought up by neighbors as well, as a concern.
Right, but I think noise, I think if I remember in the packet, it's like, not sure how much we can do with a building like that, other than ask maybe that the doors stay closed even in the hot
Correct,
months
yeah.
to sort of minimize that. I mean,
Yeah,
the
I think that
basketball
came
courts
up
and
that
it's a
sometimes
stainless
doors look
steel
at-
building with probably very little insulation, so what are we gonna do, right?
Right, yeah, I think
That's
that,
what it is.
that came up before, yeah, about doors being left
Okay.
open in the summer.
I think we're all level set. Darren, would you like to kick us off on opinions about fees or where we're at in the process?
Yeah, I guess for fees, I think the requested or recommended fee is $300, right? So I just don't see the need to drop that or reduce that, given the amount of time that's been spent by Joe and staff here and Paul in the fire department. So I think I'm comfortable with $300. I mean, if it was much more than that, I could see having some room there, but for $300, I don't think that's, I think that the staff has spent more time than that on this, so
Yeah.
I'm happy keeping it there. Thank you, Paul, and to the team for updating as much as has been done so far. This is good. So, a couple of questions I had. There's
Can I
a,
just stick to the fees first? I'd like to get that out of the way.
Sure. You wanna work through the fees?
I do.
Okay.
Because, I mean, technically, we shouldn't be discussing anything until we have a fee
Mike, do you have an
set.
opinion on fees?
I do. Joe, if you could refresh my memory, what would the normal filing fee for this be?
3,000.
But here's the problem. There's no separate filing fee for site plan modification. You haven't progressed that point into your amending your fee schedule.
Right.
It's the same fee schedule as if we were building a building.
Yes.
So that's why we asked for some relief.
Right.
Okay.
I could appreciate that. And in my mind, we're still working under the $3,000 probably from the original application. But I can't see waiving any of this fee for the time and effort that the staff has had to go through, the town has had to go through, just rectifying the issues under the first decision. So I would go for the full fee,
The full fee.
full fee.
Okay.
To be fair, I think the full fee, because of the size of the buildings, originally would have been around 9,000, and we lowered it to 3,000 for the first application because they were doing all this additional work to help bring the driveway up to compliance for stormwater and such.
Well, I wouldn't.
And the last time I had proposed 1,000, so given that they're not doing mitigation really this time, but I do appreciate that. I knew there was going to be a lot of staff time involved, so I think 1,000 would be a minimum that I would be happy with.
So we have a 300, a 3,000, a 1,000. Bob, do you have any opinions on a fee?
No, actually, all right, I misread, but okay.
No, I just think there should be, I'm not in favor of waiving the whole fee.
Yep.
As was stated by several of you, we have been seeing town staff spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be some fee associated with this application at this time.
Yeah. And I agree with that some fee does need to be applied here, and I will say, Mr. Alvin, that it's unfortunate that in some cases, like, some work has been done, right? Clearly, some crosswalking was put down. It wasn't put down at the right width. So to some extent, what I'm cognizant of is that the need for town staff to keep going back out there is due, at least in part, to your clients sort of not addressing things right away and getting them done in a sort of a standard way. So it's kind of this unfortunate cycle that we're in where town staff has to keep getting involved. So I appreciate where you're coming from with this isn't like a brand new application, but we certainly are applying an awful lot of effort to something that's simply a change in use or a modification of a site plan, if you will. So, okay, well, sounds like we have a $3,000 nomination, a $1,000 nomination. Does anyone want to put forward a motion? And we can have just take a vote on it, or we can continue to discuss.
No, I think,
You'd have set a number that you would feel comfortable with.
I think 1,000 seems fair to me, but if you feel strongly at 3,000, I can potentially support that as well. But it feels like more effort than $300, but 3,000 does seem like a little bit high. So I'm just trying to something in the middle.
Yeah, well, I'd say 1,500, I'd be comfortable with 1,500 on this, if that would please the board.
I would be happy with that.
Put forward a motion.
I'd move that we amend or change the fee for this application from 3,000 to 1,500.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, we've arrived at a fee. That's good. Okay, Darren, I'll come back to you then. Let's
Cool.
pick up the conversation of where we are. And are you feeling in a good place to move this forward and approve this tonight, or do we think we need to see more out of the applicant before we take that step?
No, I'm not at that point yet. I think a couple things, Mr. Alphen. So on the 1st of December, I know you're not Mr. Yule, so you might know the answer to this, or Joe might. There was a memo from Mr. Yule to Joe that basically gave some updates on what they've been doing. I just had a question. It says, signs will be installed inside buildings 13 and 16 so as to be visible to visitors. This will allow the fire department staff to know in advance where in the facility a call is coming from. Is that meant to be outside or inside?
Both.
Both.
So that was part of the discussion with the fire department, when people are in there, and if something were to come up, if they call the fire department, they'd like to be able to identify the inside of the building and tell the fire department, I'm in building 13.
Okay.
And the fire department, even if you have somebody who's brand new, for the department, and not having had the training, will know which building 13 is, because it'll be on the outside as well.
All right, that's good. Good to know. And then, one of the outstanding issues is the status of the signs. And I think that was from when you guys first came in front of us, I think Mr. Yule mentioned that it was a result of COVID and there was delay. And, I just want to see if there's an update on the status of the signs, meaning the entrance signs, directional signs, all that kind of stuff. Because there were,
Handicap signs.
yeah, there were,
We're back ordered.
the no parking, the handicap, the directional signs, and there's also the signs at the entrance and so forth, so.
And signage for the fire lanes as well, that's what helps with the enforcement.
Right, so all the signage, I'd like to get an update on definitively where that is, and even if it could be included in the plans.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the lighting, we did a site walk down there. I think if you can shield those back lights to not project straight out towards the road in the back, but down, because I think ideally you want to see behind the building. You don't necessarily want to see out into the woods.
Yeah, did you conduct the site visit, or was it Jeff?
This was back a while ago, we went out at nighttime to see the lighting, so it was myself along with Darren.
So if you could identify which lights are the offending lights, we'll fix them, how's that?
Yeah, I think there's
There's several.
Yeah, there's
Several along the
There's
back,
several along the top of the back
Okay.
of the building, Paul. I
Yeah.
think they're all kind of in the same boat.
All right.
Yeah.
If there's shielding done to all of them, that would really kind of help, I think,
Okay.
the neighbors in the back.
Yeah, I think the intent there is just to direct the lighting downward. We don't
Right.
want them turned off. Just direct,
Yeah.
just put up a shield to keep it from
Yeah.
light intrusion into the neighbor's yard.
Exactly, that's all.
I mean, Mr. Yule can determine, since, as you said, those lights were there back when it was
Yep.
the Courier, and it's up to Mr. Yule to determine, does he still feel the need for the lights in the back?
Well, he said he just upgraded them to LED, so if he's gonna,
All right,
I don't know if he did the ones, if he did the ones in the back, he should have known what to do.
all right,
Yeah, I think they were LED.
understood.
I don't think he did the ones in the back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I think that, given where we are, I'd like to see a draft before we make a vote on approval. So
Yep.
I think if we can, it sounds like the applicant's working well with staff on making advances here. So if you can continue to kind of hammer those things out and have it in a draft, even for next meeting, we could review that.
Yep.
That's my thoughts.
Thanks. Mike?
yes, thank you. So, I happened to take a ride through the parking lot, this evening before I came here, and I don't see any difference from the time I drove by through October 4th. I'm glad to hear that Mr. Yule's working with the town and with the departments. That's great news. We don't have anything in our packet from the fire department. I just want to see some progress, right? Get to see this thing starting getting done.
Yep.
He's been open for a long time. I'm not a contractor, but, just even these meetings, that there's the standards that they have to do for striping and parking lots and crosswalks and spray painting the lines with a stencil before the meeting 3 months ago. It still hasn't been done, so, I'm not comfortable. We'll see, I shouldn't say that. If we come back at the next meeting and then his plans are updated as requested by town, we've got information from the departments that everything's great, and we know that the parking lots have been striped accordingly, then I'm all for it.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Mike. Kate?
Yeah, I agree, there's been progress. One of the things I would still like to see is on the plan of record, if the location of the buildings would be marked on the plan, like what is building 18, 17, 13, 16. Because the fire department, they're told building 13 and it's a new person, how are they gonna know?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're doing that, the buildings are gonna be marked
They're
indoors and
gonna
outdoors.
have a big sign on them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But it would also be nice for the plan of record if it actually showed what's building in 13 and 16, so that somebody knows we are covering this part of this huge multi-angle thing.
It was part of our application, there was a separate plan showing the building designations.
I know, but it was
All
like, it wasn't on the official plan.
Okay,
And I agree on the lights on the back. If he can just look at it, does he really need them? Maybe he can get rid of some of them, and the ones that he wants to keep, just make sure that they are downward, that there's no light intrusion above or facing the, pointing up towards the Pershing Road. It's too bad you can't do something about the noise, but the building is what it is, and I agree, if there is a condition that they cannot open the doors except in the back, except during an emergency, I would be okay with that. There were some comments from, was this in the town staff report, I believe? Yeah, the town staff report. It's page 8 in our packet. I don't know, it might be the 3rd page in the report. And there were some comments in there, things that I think could be turned into conditions, like the proposed fire lane should be striped prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit. All crosswalks should be the correct width of minimum of 6 feet prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit. We need clarification on the dimensions of the accessible parking spaces and the striping prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit. And so that kind of just points out that technically right now there is no occupancy permit for these 2 buildings. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Bob?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. The one thing I haven't heard specifically was my concerns when I visited the site had to do with the parking overflow that was existing and the seemingly illegal parking that was taking place along the perimeters of the first major parking lot. And the only thing I was hoping to see, but the applicant, I think, to try to encourage people to park in the legal parking spaces. And it just seemed that folks were not willing to walk that extra bit. For the small portion of parking that is closer to the older mill buildings, because I think if that was occurring, then the parking that seems to be taking place along the drive in and on the perimeter of the property might be able to be stopped. So that's really my concern, is getting people to use the legal parking so that it doesn't impinge upon the fire access. Over.
I had pertaining to that, Bob, I don't know if this is feasible or not, but part of the issue is that buildings 13 and 16 are so far, quote, in quotes, far away from the building entrance, which is way on the other side of the complex. I don't know if it's feasible at all to make the doors in buildings 13 and 16 exit only, no entrance, but at least they could use them for exits.
they are.
Already are, yeah.
Well, they shouldn't be using them at all theoretically, but
Well, they will be.
they will be. I was going to say that might encourage people to park at that end if they know they can get to their cars quickly.
Now that Chris thought the meeting was at 7:30, but now that he's here and
Yeah.
I think there is.
We fooled you.
Sorry.
I think he does have, we have some comments with regard to the parking for Bob's question.
Okay.
Who wants to answer that question?
We've given a lot of thought to the issue of compliance in parking, and there's 2 solutions. One is, well, 3. One is everything's going to be restriped to make it brighter, easier to see. 2, the extent of the drop-off and fire lane areas has been cut back considerably, which will, I think, allow people to understand that there are dedicated fire lanes. Not everything is a fire lane, which I think just encouraged people to ignore them. It's a little bit of a backwards expectation, and we've noticed it. And so I think in the new plan, worked out with the fire department, that will help that some. And the staffing is there, like at the last tournament, there were staff people present for the entire event, and there were very few issues. So I think it's a matter of tightening everything up.
Bob, any response to that, or?
No, I mean, I'm willing to, I just want to see something be done to make this improvement, and I think it was Kate mentioned the emergency, or the access, the egress access coming out of the building might help that.
Yep.
But I just think we need the applicant to encourage folks to park legally and to emphasize what the options are so that we can utilize the park spaces that are there safely.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
It's crazy, even at the post office, there's people in the fire lane, and at Market Valley, it's like people say, well, the building's not on fire, I guess I can park here.
Right.
I'll only be 5 minutes.
It's crazy.
Right. Yep. Okay, so I guess I'm last. I mean, you've heard interest in having the signage done, interest in sort of cleaning up and organizing the fire lane striping as well as the crosswalk striping. You've heard adding some detail to the plans to include like the building numbers, and I would just say I think we really need to have that as a stamped plan. I know I don't want to speak on behalf of engineering, but I know they would appreciate having that. The final version of the plans, if we've arrived at what it should look like now that we've gone through a round of good conversations with town staff, the fire department, and everybody else, let's get those plans stamped so that we know we have an engineer saying, yes, this will actually work.
You're not going to surprise me with a stamp plan, are you?
Have you?
I didn't even look, to be honest.
All right, I don't see one.
I
So,
don't see one.
your next meeting is the 20th, is that right?
That is correct.
And the idea is that if we get this stuff in, the staff could perhaps draft a decision for that meeting. How long will it take for you to get a final plan into the staff? Think of a stamp on.
I don't know what I missed being late.
We're in good shape.
I think the overview is we're happy to hear that progress is being made. There's still a few loose ends we'd like to see buttoned up with regard to the striping on the plans, as we just talked about, and get an update on the signage and when we can expect to see that signage in place. And I think we'll be in a better position if those things are worked on to be able to take action.
The signage, I can only say we'll start on it right away once there's a final approval. That's the only thing that it's waiting for now. The signs inside the building will be the same. Those are for the fire department. I don't know
Approval
what
by
other
who
changes
are you waiting for approval by?
from the board.
But what about the signs that were required before?
Yeah, we're talking about the outside signage, directional signage.
Well, as we said, I think at the first hearing, the facility went through some significant changes. There was the problem of the pandemic shutting everything down, and it basically generated a lot of chaos. And at that point, the tenant in the warehouse space left, and that's when we decided to expand Millworks into it. So basically, all of the signs would have to be revised, which required a new filing, which is what this is.
So you didn't need a fire lane before?
We did need fire lanes, but in terms of signage, it
Handicap
was
parking
separate.
signs, they're not there, and you had no
Crosswalks.
excuse, because that was required before April of last
Yes,
year,
and-
so you have no excuse for not having ordered it.
I'm not arguing, I'm just saying that the signs that are subject to approval of the board, I just took it as an entire package. It wasn't an attempt to shirk the responsibility. It was pretty crazy, and we were struggling, trying to keep everything going, and now we're trying to put everything to right in one swell, what's the word?
Fell swoop.
Swell swoop, yeah, and get that all done.
Well, it'll be swell if the swoop happens by the 20th. Do we think we'll be in a position for that?
Not to install signs, no, but we can have the plan done. I mean,
But you need it in advance. When would you need the stamp plan finalized?
What's the deadline for the meeting on the 20th is what? Is it next Friday?
I can look that up for you, Mr. Chairman. Just give me a minute.
I don't have
Yeah,
the,
that would be
I'm sorry,
right.
Alex.
That's
A week before.
I believe it's Friday.
It's this Friday.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the deadline would be this Friday.
We can do that.
We'll give it a spin.
So we could put you on, and if you need to
Sure.
continue.
The meeting after that is January 3rd, so.
Yeah, it's the 20th or January 3rd. You can kind of take your pick if you think it's safer to shoot for the 3rd.
Oh, we need to be done.
You need the
I
occupancy
think, you know,
permits.
that is completely within your control. I may not feel that way, but that is in your control. Please just come back to us and show us a stamped plan, talk to
Paul
us
will
about when the
I'll let
striping's
them know what
happening and when the
additional
signage
tweaks
will
we
be
need to the
installed.
plan, and
And
we'll
we'll
endeavor
also,
to do that.
and we'll also need acknowledgement from staff that the fee we have received the check for the fee.
Yeah, I think you got a check for $3,000, right?
Correct.
Right.
We've been holding it.
They're gonna give you some money back.
They'll
All right.
swap checks with you.
So are we,
7 o'clock.
I move we continue.
Yep.
Public hearing for 22 Town Farm Road, Building 13 of 16, to the 20th December at 7 PM, either here or on Zoom. Check the agenda.
Starting at 7 PM, did you say?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Wait, we have a
Okay.
motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye. Gentlemen,
Thank you again.
enjoy this festive time. See you on the 20th.
Very good, thank you.
My apologies, I've never seen a meeting set before 7:30 and I didn't even check.
We changed it.
We changed it
two
recently.
meetings ago, I think. We started a little earlier. Get us out of here a little earlier, but we're getting to be old. We fall asleep at about 11 o'clock now, so.
And a Patriot term.
Before then.
11:29.
I was trying to make us still seem, you know. Okay.
8:20 tonight.
All right, the next public hearing item before us is PB 2142. It's a site plan review and a stormwater management permit for 71 and 0 Powers Road. This is a new application before us this evening. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I say aye. Is there a motion to open the public hearing for PB 2142?
Second.
So moved.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, Darren?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, we are open.
Oh,
you
Mr.
recusing?
Chair, I have to recuse myself. I'm sorry.
Absolutely,
I'm
understood.
I'm so excited to hear about it.
Okay. With that, we'll go to the applicant. Good evening and happy holidays.
Good evening. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins. Also with me tonight is Seth Donahoe, the project engineer, and Sam Palmer from Powers Road Real Estate LLC.
Yep.
As you mentioned, we're here for a site plan review and for a stormwater permit for 0 and 71 Powers Road. And for those of you looking at the plan, 71 Powers Road actually takes up most of the project site, but 0 Powers Road is that thin area towards the top of this plan sheet that was a railroad bed, and that makes up 0 Powers Road. There are currently multiple principal structures on the site. Most of you are probably very familiar with it. They sit right on the front of the street. One small single-family unit, one larger multifamily unit structure, as well as various accessory structures. Honestly, some of those various accessory structures that were on the rear of the property have since been removed. The site is pre-existing non-conforming and received a special permit to demolish all of the structures on the site, and now we are proposing 5 single-family homes. There it is. The 5 homes will be placed around a cul-de-sac and will be placed at least 35 feet apart on the site, which is much more than the 20 feet that's required between the structures. Structurally, the proposal also required special permit relief from the zoning board because this is an IH zoning district, so it has a 100-foot setback actually from Powers Road. But again, those of you familiar with the site, the existing structures sit about 14.9 feet from the street. The proposal moves those structures back about to 50 feet. The ZBA also allowed for, I call them technical landscape waivers, that were really for industrial zone properties, for landscaping within the first 100 feet of that buffer, and also for buffer strips of 25 feet around structures. Again, these are mostly for industrial buildings in the IH zoning district. So the zoning board did allow those waivers as well. In addition to the improved setbacks, going back to 50 feet, we're actually really removing structures within the setback as well. Right now, there's approximately 5,849 square feet of structure within that setback, and we'll be changing that to 2,975 square feet. So it's really a stark reduction in square footage. The site is further improved that we're removing one of the accesses right across from Equestrian Way and going to a single access, which will really improve the safety on site. And the site will also be improved from a conservation standpoint. Anybody that's ever been to the rear of the site or seen the rear of the site, it's very disturbed in the back. There was one proposal that this board's already looked at that had disturbance in that area. This is a far reduction to even that. I won't go into that in a lot of detail. I know Seth will go through that. Adding that Zero Powers Road, why did we do it? It's actually an upland area. And I know you can see that there's a finger of wetland that goes, that's really still the front of the site, but there is some dry upland back there. And that railway bed actually goes all the way to some conservation restriction land owned by Kimball Farm all the way back. So this strip will actually be a trail access to the front of the property that will give access to the 11 acres of open space that will be left open after the development. I think at this point I'll hand it over to Seth just to go through the technical aspects of the project.
Good evening, board members, and I am Seth Donahoe with Dillis and Roy, as Melissa mentioned, and we've been in charge of the land surveying and civil engineering for this site. As Melissa mentioned, this board has seen a previous proposal for this site, and we believe we've improved on that dramatically. The site does slope down from Powers Road. What we're proposing is a single entrance that has sufficient sight distances in both directions. It'll be about 8 feet lower than Powers Road at the cul-de-sac area, and that'll help reduce the visibility of structures on the site. So as Melissa mentioned, there's presently a large barn and existing dwelling very near the roadway. That'll be improved upon quite a bit. There'll also be some landscaping incorporated along the roadway area to help shield that as well. All of our runoff from impervious surfaces will be collected via catch basins and routed to the infiltration area that your mouse is over. And the stormwater management on the system has been designed in full conformance with both the state and more stringent local regulations. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the wetland setbacks. This site has been laid out to be in full conformance with the Westford's required setbacks to wetlands in terms of disturbance areas and in terms of how far buildings can be from wetlands as well. So overall, it's a significant improvement over what's there now. I'll turn it back to you, Melissa, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and just because I know this project has been stop and go, just to give the board just a little bit of an update, we are getting ready to file with conservation. We will have to file for a certificate of compliance for any work we've actually started on the site, and then an order of conditions for this new work. We did start with the old project, a little bit of the demolition survey, looking at the asbestos and some hazardous materials, but that's as far as we've got. These houses, certainly the farmhouse itself, will trip a historical review when we get to demo, so we expect there will be some questions there from the Historic Commission. And I think that covers it. I know at this point, engineering still hasn't reviewed this, and I would expect that we probably won't be ready to come back to this board till the first meeting in January, assuming Mr. Starrett and Jeremy's schedule. But we'd like to hear the initial comments that the board may have.
And just for reference, that existing farmhouse is 1903, is that what I remember from the packet?
That's what the assessor's card has it at, 1903, yes.
Great.
I forgot to mention that these units too, if you're familiar with those units at Main Street and Cold Spring that just got constructed, these units here will be very similar to those units. So they're very modest in size, nice small units.
Great. Excellent. Thank you for the overview. Joe, anything from town staff on this one, or not yet?
Nothing at this point, just looking to get feedback from the board, so that way engineering have an opportunity to comment on the application.
Paul, I mean, do you think you guys would have time to review this ahead of the January 3rd meeting?
Yeah, we'll know, once we begin to look and determine, how many comments are coming, or the designer's willingness to get together with us early on will help. But I can't guarantee that. We'll certainly let them know within a window of opportunity to continue.
Yep. Great. Bob, would you like to go first with board comments?
Sure. One comment I had was with respect to the draft NPDF that was in the packet. as presented, it's pretty much unreadable. I'm not sure if anybody else had any success, but it appears to be of a bad resolution. So we're going to need that resubmitted so we can read that EPA request.
Okay, we can resubmit that.
Okay. Other question, I didn't see anything in here mentioned regarding the historical aspects of the property. I know it's 1903, so it falls under the criteria for the demolition delay bylaw. Has there been any work done to bring this before the Historical Commission?
We haven't done any of that yet because we actually haven't completed our full demolition permit with the building commissioner, but as soon as we do, we will have to start that process. And I assume that Historic will be involved because of the year that, especially the farmhouse was constructed.
Right, yeah. I haven't been on the Westford Historical Commission. They are going to want to chime in on this, so that's the one thing I'm looking for. And I did notice that in Appendix L for historic properties documentation in the packet, I didn't see any information filled in at that time on that submission.
We'll have time too. We can supplement with the information that I have on its historical features to date, and then we can reach out to the Historic Commission to see if we can have a discussion with them prior to the January meeting as well, since we have a little time here.
Okay. And then the last comment I had was just have to do, it was on page 372 of the packet where you did talk about the rare species identification. It would have been helpful, I think, if you could at least just show the outline of the project site. Because with the arrow shown on there saying this is the project site, it didn't really indicate the fact that it was extending, I believe, into the area that was marked PH 1698.
Sure, that'd be easy to do. We can overlay the lot area on that so that you can see it more clearly.
So that's all my comments at this time. I'm looking forward to the rest of the board. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Bob. Mike?
Initially it looks great. Property needs to be updated over there. It's, I think some of those outbuildings are falling in on themselves. So I think, our hands here are to basically, ZBA's rendered their decision. We'll work with it. I'd like to see a chairlift over the wetlands to the ski area. Other than that, looks good to me.
Great. Darren?
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I like the reduced footprint it looks like from the other proposed plan. The only thing I would ask is, in the middle of the cul-de-sac, over the infiltration system, is that gonna be grass or paved? I would just ask if it'd be not just a giant paved circle there. If there's a way to put a rain garden in there or something that, rather than having this giant circular paved area.
Sure, we can look into that, and I will tell you, we've had a lot of back and forth, especially with the fire safety officer. As much as we don't like it aesthetically to be a paved circle, he certainly likes the paved circle, but we can reach out to Lieutenant Parsons and see if we can have a discussion about that.
Okay. I live on a private way that has this giant, circle, and in the summertime, it's probably 6,000 degrees down there, so if there's a way to reduce that, it'd be great.
Sure.
Other than that, I like it.
Okay, great. Yeah, my comments, I would generally agree with Darren and Mike. I mean, I think compared to what we were looking at with the previous application here, I think that this is a lot less obtrusive to folks on the other side of Powers Road as well as on Equestrian Way. It'll be visually less intrusive for them, so I think that's definitely good. I don't know that I'm, I get the point on the, a giant circle of pavement. I think if it was done sort of well and with some sort of an interest, I actually thought it was an interesting way to go about getting folks, one, addressing like how do you get everybody in. I also thought snow removal, which is something I'm always cognizant of, wouldn't really be that big of an issue given the layout. So I thought that was a benefit of kind of keeping it that way. I would say that it was I'm not a stormwater expert by any stretch, but I did think that it's a pretty aggressive and large looking system for a relatively small footprint of houses, one of the largest systems that I've seen for a fairly small footprint. So just interested in, as we get deeper into the discussion, maintenance for that, and what is the estimated annual fee? Is that being applied to a homeowners association? All of the typical questions we would ask, because I could see that maintaining a system this complicated is probably going to be costly. I think it needs to be very clear to the owners of these homes that it has to be maintained, given the brook and the wetlands in the area that are definitely a sensitive area. So I'll be looking to see some of that. I saw the lighting is all gonna be dark sky compliant, so I don't have any concerns there. You know, the landscaping I thought looked good. I'm sure, you know, we can have some comments back for you as we get deeper in the discussion around, you know, placement to try to do our best to maximize the foliage blocking site, you know, the sight lines into the properties from, you know, neighbors and abutters and things like that. But obviously on three sides, it's kind of pretty isolated already, so. And to your point, the downhill nature of the site will sort of reduce the visual impact to some degree already, so. Those are my comments at this point.
Great.
So great, so I think we can open it up to the audience. If anybody has any comments on PB 2142 for 71 and 00 Powers Road, now's your opportunity to get up and make comments. Okay, seeing none. So I guess the next steps then are to pick a date. So it sounds like, is January 3rd feasible?
It's not impossible, and we will, Mr. Chair, do everything we can, you know, to take a look at this. Again, it's a question of how well the plan was designed, and
Yep.
when we go through that checklist.
Yep, great. All right, so if January 3rd works for you?
Yes, and we'll grant an extension through the 4th for now, and then if we need more time, we can go further as well. Because I think that the deadline is the 20th, so we'll do that extension.
Great, we appreciate that.
So I move that we continue PB 2142, 71 and 0 Powers Road to January 3rd, 7 PM, Town Hall, unless otherwise noted.
Great. Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob? Aye. Mike? Aye. Darren?
Aye.
I say aye.
Thank you very much.
Happy holidays. Thanks. See you on the 3rd.
I'm still staying.
Oh, you're here.
Seth's gotta go.
See you on the 3rd. Okay, the next public hearing item is PB 2143. This is a site plan review
You can-
in accordance with section 9.4 of the Town of Westford zoning bylaws, and a change from pre-existing non-conforming uses, that being business and multifamily, to only multifamily use, including the demolition of existing office workshop buildings, construction of a two-family dwelling, and the conversion of a dwelling for the existing residential structure from 1 unit to 2, for a total of 4 residential units on the property. This is all taking place at 124 Main Street, Lot 4. Some might know it as the Hicks property. This is a new application, so is there a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice?
Move.
Second. Motion and a second.
Kind of hate it, but that's okay.
All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Darren? Aye. I say aye. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on PB 2143?
Move.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor, Darren?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I say aye. Welcome.
Good evening again. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins. Also with me tonight is Joe Cataldo, who's manager of 124 MSW LLC. Matt Waterman from Land Tech is a civil engineer, and then Jim Zegowitz from the MZO Group, who's the project architect. As Mr. Chair has noted, we're here tonight for a site plan review and a stormwater permit for the property known as Hicks Farm. This is specific to Lot 4. This was the marketing plan, but I always think it's helpful to start with, just so the board can see the layout. People always want to know exactly where we are on the lay of the land out there. But this is right in the center of the property on Lot 4, where the significant construction and pavement is. This portion of the site is 1.94 acres. We recently received our approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The proposal is to remove all structures from the site except for that existing house, which is just the front portion there. I know sometimes people think that that apartment in the back and everything is staying with it as well, but it's just that front portion of the house. Everything else will be removed. The proposal is to put 2 units in that house, which we've done under the conversion bylaw under section 10.2. And then that area that's marked office will actually be demolished, and there will be 2 units that are put into that office area into a new building that looks like a carriage house, which will really be in harmony with the historical features of the main house. I'll let Jim Zegowitz speak to that in a little bit. But one of the units within that new structure will be deed restricted to units 55 and over. And I will note, just because the discussion of the last hearing, we have been working significantly with the Historic Commission on this property. I won't bore you with the history of this site, but it's been a little bit of everything, including a funeral home. We did find coffin boxes in the attic, just just a point of interest. But the Historic Commission's very interested in it, and we will be doing some work that they've requested, and we're working through the demolition permit right now. This plan took into consideration a lot of comments from abutters. We met with the abutters before we even refiled with the Zoning Board of Appeals for this project. I know it's a little bit out of the purview, but I will go through what the abutters' main concerns were as we went through the process. Originally, the abutters were concerned with the stream in the back. Originally, as part of our notice of resource area delineation, we were trying to get an intermittent stream determination on that rear stream. We did go back and withdraw that intermittent stream determination, so now we're respecting that stream and the setback. Butters were also concerned with landscaping and parking, especially landscaping in the rear, because as you can see, the configuration is for cars to come in and go back. There's houses on the rear portion of the site there. So what we'd agreed to do is, and this was actually one of the abutters' idea, was to put an earthen berm there, and then on top of the earthen berm, we're going to put a landscape buffer of trees. We're actually going to put more trees there in the rear, in the meadow area. And then one additional comment from the abutters is, although we were meeting the parking requirements, they asked us to have additional parking. So what we did was to give 4 pervious spaces there. And it actually ends up being a total of 3 spaces per unit, which is in excess of what's required under the zoning bylaw. The proposal has a total reduction in building coverage of 4,075 square feet, which is huge, just on Lot 4 alone. And a total reduction of pavement on Lot 4 of 8,430 square feet, just a lot of pavement existing on the site today. It's a total reduction of 17.2% of impervious area post-development that will be removed from the site. Also to note, all of these units will be 2-bedroom. One of them will be restricted to 55 and over. So there is a total of 8 bedrooms on the site. And in addition, I know it's marked on the plan, but I think it's good to note that as part of the future sidewalk master plan, it does go down to this area of Main Street. I know this board's very familiar with it, but there is a pinch point on this property. So the owner has agreed to give the town of Westford an easement along the front of the property so that the sidewalk can be constructed at a later date. I won't belabor anything else. I'll turn it over to Matt to just go through the general civil points of the development.
All right, thank you. Matt Waterman, for the record, with Landtech Consultants. And I know this board has seen at least some or most of the reiterations either through your packets when we were in front of the Board of Appeals, and where we had tried different configurations that extended the development further back towards Kersey Circle and Douglas Road. So when we took on this project and the comments that we had gained from those previous applications, it was really to focus and pull the development as close to Main Street, away from the resource areas, away from the abutters on Douglas Road, and how to better utilize the structures, as Melissa said, the existing house, which was the Hicks house, and then the office building. So we utilized the existing curb cuts for the main access for the property, which exists today. They have excellent sight lines, stopping sight distance greater than 500 feet. We put the visitor parking out front, and then it added a small alleyway or access drive to the back, to where the existing garage, which currently the garage doors face the west or towards the Westford Center. And so when we redo the structure and flipping it to this right-hand side, it kind of gives a better look to what we had some previous versions where there was some detached garage in kind of a couple of different areas, and felt like this one really focused everything and minimized the amount of pavement, the traffic flows, pedestrian movements, all the things that kind of keep it nice and tidy, so to speak. As Melissa went through the parking, the one we've been working with the abutters, they each have 1 interior space per unit. They each have own designated exterior space, and then 4 visitor spots out front, for a total of 12 parking spaces. Utilities, Main Street has municipal water, natural gas, obviously electric, cable, and telephone. The septic is out behind the main house. It's consistent with the design flow for what's on the site, Lot 4 today, which is the original house and the original office, which when you do the calculations, it equates to about 8 bedrooms, which is what we're keeping with this development. The house is 5 bedrooms, and then the office, which is about 4,000 square feet, converts to about 3 bedrooms worth of space. Stormwater, we've been, obviously done a couple of the A&R lots. It's consistent with the design that we did with lots 1, 2, and 3, and then lots 5 and 6. A couple pocket rain gardens, roof infiltration, trying to break up the stormwater as much as possible. And so it's consistent with what this board has seen for the adjacent A&R lots. Melissa went through the percent impervious, landscaping, consistent with landscaping around the front of the buildings, maintaining the trees to the extent practical. The developers are well-versed in trees, and nursery and landscaping is their background. And so we went through that and kept the trees, the good specimen trees, thinned out some of the thinner kind of evergreens that are tight to the building and that will kind of conflict with construction. And so there's a lot of thought that went into what trees and working with the Cataldos and what trees were saved. Obviously in the back, we're going to be working with conservation. We filed a notice of intent. We're meeting with them on Wednesday. We'll go through the kind of the work and the plantings on the northern end of the lot, which includes restoring and removing all pavement within the 200-foot riverfront, and naturalizing the entire area within the 100-foot riverfront. It'll be maintained as a meadow. It'll still be mowed once or twice a year. It'll become a natural meadow habitat, and planted, as Melissa went through, with the shade trees as a buffer and that earthen berm. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jim, who's...
Good evening, Jim Zegowitz with the MZO Group Architects out of Main Street in Stoneham. I also have a remote location down here on Carlisle Road. Let's see, so the basic design approach to this project was fairly simple. We're trying to create a small composition of historic-looking buildings by maintaining the existing farmhouse, giving it somewhat of a little bit of a facelift, and then adding where the existing office building is on the site, adding a building that we call the carriage house. Much smaller. That building is designed to be a little bit smaller in scale. Everything from the second floor would spring off of the roof line, and everything would spring off the top of the first floor walls and end at the second floor. So as far as the farmhouse is concerned, there's two units going in there. We intend to remove the existing roof line from the left side of the main gables facing Main Street, all the way over to the left side of the building, to try and clean those things up a little bit and give ourselves a little bit more usable space. Inside the building right now, those are both half stories on everything from the main gables to the left. If you look at the building right now, there's a small shed roof portion over the existing center entrance of the building, just below that chimney, that we will keep. But by raising that second floor from the left of those gables over, we'll definitely get some more usable space. Both of those units in the farmhouse will be 2-bedroom units. Both of the units will be about 2,000 square feet, more or less. To the carriage house, again, it's in the exact same footprint of the existing office building. And the main focus on that design is to keep the building as low as possible, to give it that sort of secondary look, subservient look to the existing farmhouse. We've incorporated the different kind of carriage house doors on the right, some different siding materials, and we've maintained the cupola of the existing office building to try and keep that building looking somewhat different and readily recognizable as not the primary building on the project. Both of the units in that building will also be around 2,000 square feet. They'll also both be 2-bedroom units. As they currently stand, either one of those units could be occupied with a 55 or over, but we will be looking to tighten up the floor plans of those buildings as we move on through the process. And those are the conceptual floor plans of the farmhouse after renovation. We have created a fire separation in the middle of the building that you can see there, just to the right of the leftmost staircase. and that would be our 1 hour fire separation between the 2 units as required by code. Melissa had mentioned that we did go through the building with the Historic Commission. There's quite a bit of materials in there that we will be working with, saving and not disrupting. Some of the detail work around the front entrance, the support of the chimney in the basement was very important. And a lot of the timbers in the second floor of the roofs that we will be removing, we have decided, and working with Joe, the client, and with the Historic Commission, that we would be reusing those and resourcing those into a small accessory building to be placed on the site of 100 square feet or so for shed purposes or maintenance issues, that kind of thing. With that, if there's any questions?
I think we have one more slide. I'm going to let Matt go through it to just show you the landscape architecture. I know we had a little on that plan, but we actually did go through and do a landscape architecture plan.
Yep, and working, they hired a landscape architect that prepared the plans. It'll get, I think some of the tree and the plantings, and highlights in the back, the area that's going to be maintained as meadow. There's that hatch with the cross or the plus sign. That would be the area that's maintained as meadow. And then directly in front of that is the plantings, that's kind of a living wall or a natural buffer between our project and the backs of Douglas Road, which kind of seem far away, but now that it's wintertime, they're a little closer than it looked in the summertime, for sure. And then you can see the earthen berm, and then you can see the plantings, which for every tree that we're taking down, we're providing one tree equal. And so there's all the trees along the back and around the houses that would be provided. Any plantings within the buffer zone, we'd have to finalize with conservation to make sure they're native. But otherwise, this is a good general idea of the planting plan, and anything that gets adjusted or swept, we'd obviously have to go through with planning or the staff.
Great.
And that's all we have, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you very much. Joe, anything from town staff on this?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
And
We did 5 and 6 and look forward to getting this one done as well.
great. Thank you very much. All right, then with that, I guess I'll go to the board for comments. Darren, would you like to kick us off?
Yep, sure. Yeah, look forward to engineering's comments. I like the plan. I think the reduction in structure and impervious surfaces is a benefit. And I like the style of the buildings as well. I think it fits in well. So looking forward to seeing the comments from engineering. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Darren. Mike?
I agree. I'm reminded of the farm on 225 by Robinson School, and what a nice job those condos came out to be, so I think it looks great, so I'm happy with it. Look forward to hearing.
Awesome. Thank you. Kate?
I agree. It'll look a lot better. A lot of buildings will be removed partly from this, and lots 2 and 4. I was just confused. I heard, oh, we're getting rid of this one-story office and something about the barn, but then when I look at your plans, it's like you're actually keeping those and just fixing them up.
No, they're actually going to be completely demolished. This will be the carriage house will be a brand-new structure.
But it looks as though the footprints are the same.
Yes, we tried to keep the footprint the same, yes. I know, I think it's in the zoning board decision, I think it's said in a larger volume, but it's actually not a larger volume, that's just the way that the
Okay.
bylaw reads, yeah.
All righty, and thank you very much for offering to do the easements for the sidewalks. I know at some point we'll take use of those, and I assume I don't know who's going to design it, probably you, engineering, but it should be easy to design. I do want to read into the record an email from Ellen Hardy. She was not able to attend this, and she had sent this. I do not believe the planning board has jurisdiction over house style, but we can suggest, right? Yep, we can always suggest. So she noticed that the footprints of the proposed houses are all the same. A similar situation happened when the land in Parker Village in the triangle with the Wilder Johnson farmhouse was developed about 6 years ago, and some Parker Village residents met with the builder and asked him to respect the historic integrity of the area. As a result, the builder added a farmer's porch to one house and changed the facade of another. It made a huge difference in the look of the new homes relative to the nearby historic farmhouses. Perhaps we, the planning board, can make similar suggestions to the developer. I think she's just concerned at the look of both from the street. They're both big masses, and maybe something could be done to make one look different from the other.
And I think it's hard to tell in the rendering, but it is broken up pretty well. But I will say the developer's gone out of their way to try to incorporate the historic design of that original farmhouse and keep really largely the front portion of that farmhouse intact, which is very important to the Historic Commission, and then marry that look to the carriage house so that they actually do look similar in design, but the carriage house will look secondary in nature, especially coming from the town center down Main Street. You're going to see, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the doorway, one more down, there you go, the garage bay doors and all of that. So I think that it will look different aesthetically, but I think it's important from the front view shed that they look like similar units, because the intention is for it to look like a farmhouse with a carriage house that are similar in design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, no, we await engineering review for stormwater and all that.
Great, thank you, Kate. Bob?
Yeah, I think following up on what Kate said, I was surprised to learn how old the house was when I read the packet. I didn't realize it went as far back, and it's interesting to hear some of the history of the home. So yeah, I agree, trying to preserve as much of that historical character of not only the property, but just the structures themselves. I'm all for that. So I think it's a good step forward here. I like the plans. I was also confused by the removal of the building, so I think Kate's question and the response clarified to me exactly what's happening with the property. One note I just had was when I read through the packet, I was confused by the affidavits of the heirs, and specifically on page 411 of the packet, it states the state of New Hampshire, but yet we have a Massachusetts notary public executing that, and that is the paperwork for Mr. Robert David Hicks, Melissa.
Okay.
I don't know why it
Okay,
says the
he
state of New
might have-
Hampshire and Suffolk County recorded.
You can sign things out of state as long as you're in front of a notary public.
But it has it being in front of the notary public for Massachusetts.
Oh, you mean it's a typo in the acknowledgement? I see.
It appears to
Oh, it's
be,
a
'cause it
typo in
appears to
the
be
state
Suffolk
of-
County,
Oh, it should say
Massachusetts.
state of Massachusetts there. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Those are errors that can be easily fixed with a Scrivener's affidavit. What probably happened is somebody cut and pasted from another deed and forgot to change Massachusetts to New Hampshire, but I'll make a note of that. That's,
Yeah, it's identical to the other affidavits other than the state, and I couldn't understand why.
sure.
That's it, that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Bob. I agree with what the board has said. I think it looks really, really good. I liked the detail on the doors that you put in for the garage and the carriage house. I thought it was very consistent with something that looks old, and even in something that's new. Is the age-restricted unit in the carriage house the one that will have direct access to the garage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then,
Great.
and again, that'll be deed restricted to 55 and over. And I think they were actually trying to connect both of those units to somehow to the garage. That was something that the zoning board had asked as well. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do it, but it was a request.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had the sort of a similar thought. I mean, the
Yeah.
folks who are in the farmhouse, there's not really a lot you can do. They're going to have to
No.
walk across the way to get to their cars. But if there was some way to give the other person in the carriage house direct access to their unit, to their garage space, I think that would be well appreciated by a potential buyer. But
Sure.
really, at the end of the day, that's you guys' decision. Agreed. We'll wait for engineering's review and looking forward to that. So, do we think January 3rd again for this one, or?
Yeah, this one is more realistic for us. It's a,
Well, yeah, we're going to go to the
Okay,
audience,
let's see.
but I'm just kind of trying to get
this is a,
Paul's
this
feel.
is a better reach for us. We'll do what we can.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's go to the audience. If there's anybody here who would like to offer comments or feedback on PB 2143 for 124 Main Street, Lot 4, now's your chance to do so.
No.
Okay, seeing none. Anything else from the applicant?
No, again, I think that we have an extension until December 20th, so we'll make sure to give the board the applicable extension to that date past the next meeting date, and then we can work on it after that.
One additional comment with the access in the garage units where the farmhouse is kind of detached from the garages.
Yeah.
One thing is to note is that that farmhouse does have the horseshoe kind of guest entrance, which I think can be utilized for dropping off groceries, unloading, and then moving their car to the garage. So there is that guest entrance that I think is important to note.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So it helps with the fact that that house is detached from the two garage units, but I think it does, with that horseshoe-shaped driveway, gives them a little flexibility to
Yep.
to unload their cars in a safe and efficient manner.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Great. So, so I'm sorry, I heard January 3rd. Are you talking about January 3rd is okay with you?
Yes, and we'll grant an extension past, the day past that date to make sure
Great.
that you
I
have.
move that we continue the public hearing to Monday, January 3, 2022. Planning board meeting starting at 7 PM. Location probably here, but read the final, whatever the language is.
Yep.
Read the final agenda.
There's a motion?
Second.
Yep.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Darren?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And I say aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
See you on the 3rd.
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you too, Bob. Or not see you.
Hear you anyway.
Okay, that concludes our public hearing topics for the evening. This evening, we have 5 general business topics. The first, item A, is a request for administrative approval for a change in use at 175 Littleton Road. This is ADM 2144.
Mr. Chair, if we could invite Director of Public Works, Steve Cronin, to,
Absolutely. Welcome, Steve.
for the balance of some of these comments.
Absolutely. Do we have the applicant for 175 Littleton Road?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I don't know if we can move on their behalf.
Joe, what do we do here if we don't have an applicant? Do we just
Yeah, we
discuss
just
this
do it.
topic and do it?
Discuss it yet. and
Okay,
make any-
fantastic.
Yep.
Well, then,
It's going from a vape store to Supercuts.
yes.
All in favor?
Yeah, I mean, based on what was in the packet, I guess it doesn't have a tight tank, but it doesn't need one because they don't do perms and dyeing, right?
Yeah.
Seems okay to
And,
me.
and at that end of the plaza, that right now, at least, there's lots of parking, so I don't see it
Yeah.
would be an issue.
Yep,
Yeah, there was a recommendation to be an administrative approval from the building commissioner.
Yep.
So,
okay. So do we have a motion?
Where's the current one?
The current Supercuts? It's,
It's by Joanne
it was
Fabric.
down next to Joanne Fabrics, I think, yeah.
So no, it's a Crossfield guy.
Yep.
So I move that we approve the request for administrative approval to change the use for 175 Littleton Road.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye. All right, that handles the first general business item. The second item is, well, are we taking these individually, Joe, or?
I think that'd be
Yeah,
appropriate.
individually? All right.
Individually.
Great, so we have a request to perform work within the right-of-way between December 15th and April 15th, PB 2102, at the Diane Lane subdivision. So, let me start by going to Joe. Do you want to kick us off here, Joe?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. From the prior meeting, we have a number of folks here looking to get clarification on your subdivision rules and regulations.
Yep.
This is essentially a continuation of that discussion. A number of different projects that have submitted these requests for their individual projects to see what you would consider as falling under significant activity
Yep.
as a part of your rules and regulations.
Right, great. All right, looks like we have the applicant here with us this evening.
Mornings,
Uh,
or afternoon, or evening for that
Evening, yeah.
matter, right?
Yeah.
Go Patriots.
So, do you guys have anything that you want to discuss or present to us before we sort of deliberate on this, or?
Well, yes, in general, and as you mentioned, there are actually, I have submitted actually 3 requests based on 3 different clients. And obviously, the crux of the whole discussion is your bylaw, which appears to limit roadway work or work within the right-of-ways after November 15th. There's a lot of history here. It was applied in a different way in the past, and we're trying to figure out how to, it should apply going forward. But I know when we last left, the big thing, and I'm sure it's what you want to discuss, and that is what work actually falls within the, the definition of work that is significant enough that it needs to be restricted. And I have filed both waiver requests for work that we, can pretty much conclude falls within that category. But I've also submitted these requests for specific determination as to whether limited work would fall under that category or not. So if the board's to set a sort of a policy, and that would make things easier because we can all compare what we want to do. But where we have submitted these individually, and there is a slight variation between the work that's being done, I do think it would be important that we just tell you for each particular project what work we're specifically looking to do. The first filing was for Diane Lane subdivision. David Guthrie's here with me from Carlisle Road Homes, Inc. We specifically, on that project, have asked to allow us to do tree and brush cutting, stump pulling, grubbing, subgrading, rock removal, and blasting if necessary. So that's the first part of the request. The second part of the request, whether pending, would be whether or not we could install water lines and storm drain installation. However, we understand that those items would require a daily inspector paid by us and would not be allowed if the inspector deems the weather or conditions unsuitable. However, on the first list of work, it's my understanding that those are the kinds of things that would not be normally inspected daily, nor would weather be an impediment to that getting done. If it's raining or snowing or that cold, they're not going to be doing that work at all. So it's not like the other stuff where there are inspectors. So with respect to Diane Lane, we've for tonight, what we've asked is whether or not you would consider that list of work within the category of stuff that could be allowed, or whether it falls into the category of substantial requiring inspections and therefore not allowed. Does that sum it up pretty?
Yeah, I think we're here for sort of, I think collectively to sort of define that significant activity in your bylaw.
Yep. Right, so perhaps, in talking about this first one, we sort of have a discussion on where to draw the line on the second two, and it makes the follow-up conversations easier after the first one. And so Paul and Steve, appreciate you both being here. My understanding, based on reading what has been put into the packet from town staff, as well as having discussions with you at the last board meeting and hearing what you had to say at our last meeting, it sounds like in this list of tasks, you would start to get concerned about something being significant when we get to like stump pulling and grubbing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Paul Starrett, Town Engineer, I think the earthwork is the thing that concerns us the most, and in the conditions that we're anticipating with freezing weather upon us and coming more and more, and snow and rain, and being out on the site with an inspector, trying to decide what weather conditions are suitable and what weather conditions are unsuitable. But that earthwork inside the right-of-way is our biggest concern. Beyond that, I think we have more flexibility outside of that part, which is going to become public.
Yep.
And that's the main reason that we have any concern at all, is that our subdivision roads are built by developers and designed by engineers that are not working for the town directly, and we've had great success with that. The applicants before you tonight have also retained some of the best contractors in the area, and I think we've had great success up to this point. But going into these unknowns and this weather condition, we have big concerns about, how that would benefit the town, the inhabitants, and the future homeowners in that public way. Outside of that, I think we have more flexibility and less of a concern, but even then, you know, there are just perils working in the seasons that they want to work in.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Paul said, basically, you know, the town is gonna assume ownership of this infrastructure and this road in perpetuity, and I just wanna make sure that, you know, it's built and constructed to its intended design life. So that's ultimately our goal here. You know, as Paul said, I think we have a little bit less concern about things that are constructed on private property and how that could impact, you know, residents in the long run and the town itself.
Great, appreciate the comments. Okay, so I guess at this point, it's time for us to deliberate and sort of discuss where we sort of start to draw the line at what this board thinks is significant. And I think we have a list of work in front of us that we can draw from. Kate, you know, as the member of the board with the most consecutive years of experience.
Bob has I don't know, Bob, we might be equal, but,
I'll go to you first for your comments.
I appreciate the comments from everybody. Just to help me, has there already been a pre-construction hearing for Diane Lane?
No, so we submitted everything, if I may, to Joe, or maybe he'd like to answer this, but we were given permission to cut only, and then we were waiting for our shade tree hearing, which we had this morning. So now, next step would be to schedule the pre-construction.
Okay, because Diane Lane is unique compared to the other two because the initial part of the roadway is on an incline. And so there is more of an issue with runoff for this project than there is for the other two projects, even with the more benign things. So that's why I asked if there had been a pre-construction meeting where you had sat down with all of the contractors and had agreed such and such has to be done with the roadway, the construction, whatever it's called of the roadway, to make sure that, because it's on a hill, that all of the heavy truck traffic doesn't cause issues. Tree and brush clearing, I think that's pretty benign. Stump pulling, that's a 50-50 thing. Pulling a stump from a bush is different than pulling the stump from a hardwood tree where the roots go way down and you could cause, I don't know, significant soil damage and such. The blasting and the rock removal, again, rock removal, it all depends on the sizes of the rocks and such. And the blasting, I don't know, because again, you're going to be doing potentially significant disruption to the soil and its compactness and such, and how would that be protected to stop runoff and such. The water line and the installation and storm drain, based on what we heard the last time, I would not be amenable to those because staff has expressed the concern about doing any work on those and having anything that could affect the frost lines and the frost heaves and such. So I don't think I would be amenable to that part of it at least, but I'm willing to hear other people's opinions on the things in the beginning.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Kate. Bob?
I agree with everything Kate just said, and I do believe she has more years than me, but that's another matter. So,
11, how about you?
I guess the one thing I had a concern also about was, what were the operations? And looking at the photos in the packet, I'm concerned about the runoff, obviously, but also there's an impact to our residents or just anybody who's using the road there. That is a busy road. And what I noticed in the packet was a lot of stones that had already made their way into the roadway. And those are stones that are going to get picked up by those cars that are moving at a fair rate of speed in front of that property. and you're gonna see damage to other cars, paint dings, et cetera, potentially, windows, cracked. So that's my concern is, if we just started the project and we're already seeing that in the road, how are we going to, limit that? Even if we put down the typical gravel, at that entrance, I just see a lot of this getting picked up and being, placed in the road like it already has been. So I want to see us address that and figure out what are the acceptable types of operations at this time of year. That's it.
Yeah, so Bob, do you have, the scope of work that the applicant has before us for Diane Lane is pretty clear, and it seems pretty progressive in that they've kind of outlined the order of activities as they would play out on the site, right? They talk about cutting brush and trees, they talk about, pulling stumps and then grubbing, and then they talk about subsurface compaction, things like that. So do you have a sense for where in your mind the work begins to become significant?
I guess my concern here is not just where the work becomes significant, but where the access to the site. What is the order in which we're going to see that done? Because I have less concern about what's being done on the interior of the site, as opposed to what is the impact for those vehicles, or what is the sequence in which we have to bring those kind of vehicles in, and what's the impact to debris making its way out onto the roadway. I think for any operation we do on that site, there's going to have to be a driveway that has the gravel on it like I guess it currently has.
Yep.
And that's just my concern. I think within the level part, or the seemingly level areas of the site, I have less concern because I don't think the runoff will be as significant, but I'd like to see us really maybe think about limiting the work on the sloped areas, especially those areas that would lead to runoff out onto Carlisle Road.
Okay. All right, thank you for your comments, Bob.
It's not just about the scope and type of the work, but where the work is being done. I think we have to look at.
Yep. Okay, understood.
May I speak to Bob's
Sure.
comment, Mr. Chairman? I think relative to that entryway, it's twofold. One, we weren't completed with our staff was kind enough to allow us to cut trees, and it was an entry in, so to speak, if you will, so we weren't trucking in and out, bringing equipment in and out. We weren't allowed to rough grade that entryway down to subgrade. So what we did is we put 6-inch minus riprap in there that ultimately got driven into the mud, if you will, after a rainstorm. We capped it with that 1-inch minus, which is fairly loose. That's not how we would build our construction entrance if we're able to get through a pre-construction hearing and then get into construction on the site. We bring that grade down, get the top and sub out of there, get into something that's not going to wash out, if you will, and get the riprap and get that entryway built more to the standard, I think, that the town engineer is looking for. And also, if we're on-site working, we're going to have a labor pool out there that can maintain that entryway. This was a situation where we just rough prepped it to get the tree clear in because we didn't want to lose the tree clear. They're far and few between. If you don't get them, you might wait 6 months for another one. So that's sort of what happened there. That's not indicative of how the site would be maintained, and I don't think it's indicative of how we've maintained sites in the past.
Yep.
So we're hoping not to be judged on that entryway and its current situation, if you will.
Yep.
Can I just ask for clarification, because I'm a lay-person when it comes to civil engineering? You talk about removing the top and the subsurface. Define those for me.
It's the top two layers, so it's basically the organic, if you will, Kate. That's the stuff that has greater tendency to run on you. Sand can run on you as well, and clay can run on you as well, but that top and subsoil can run. The mud, that's the stuff where you have trouble getting good compaction and getting the settlement of your 6-inch riprap to sit on top of that. When that top and subsoil gets wet, oftentimes that 6-inch minus riprap can get driven into it, and then the mud bubbles up, which is what happened in this scenario.
So a subsoil is still pretty loamy?
Yes, it can be, yeah. Yep.
I don't know.
Well, I think what you're actually talking about two different things. Dave was describing the construction entrance, and in fairness to the developer, they did respond as soon as it was brought to our attention by a resident that there was tracking out onto the road. They did improve on that. The designer of record and the developer did get out there. But I think what they're talking about in describing the topsoil is at the entrance. And I anticipate your question is in interior, if they were to work on the road. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're taking off the materials, the organic materials, which are rooted and hold the soil in place. It's the stabilization that we want. Underneath that is a weathered horizon, or materials that have some sand and some gravels in it, but the underlying soils, which have no root systems, have nothing stabilizing at all in it, those would then be exposed, and those would all be subject to erosion. Not unlike we've seen on other job sites, most famously our first stormwater management permit on Preservation Way, when they exposed the side of the hill and all the materials came down into the road, and everything on that job, on that site was a worst-case scenario for us, but that's what would be exposed, which is one of the reasons we have the concerns that we do inside the layout especially.
I think the only comment, and I don't disagree with what Paul's saying, I think the only comment there is if we are allowed to work on our lots, independent of this bylaw, we're going to be in and out of there every day anyway, unless we're not allowed to. I'm just trying to clarification, but if we are allowed to work on our lots, we're going to be in and out of there all day with trucks anyway, working on the lots, if you will, pulling stumps and subgrading and doing all that stuff. And it would seem to me it would make sense to prep that road properly and prep that entrance properly so that we don't run into the situation that we've run into already.
You'll get your chance. No, not yet.
Mike?
Okay, so, in my limited time at the board, not being an engineer, I've got a lot of jobs, but I'm not an engineer. I generally default to Mr. Starrett. I think he does a wonderful job in the engineering department. But in the past 2 weeks, I've had an opportunity to talk to tens, maybe 20 different people in the construction business, different towns, former president of the Building Inspectors Association. We heard at the last meeting that none of this right-of-way work occurs in the Commonwealth. And it just must be, out of Mrs. Starrett's purview, as I found that everyone I've talked to in surrounding towns allows the subgrading. They don't allow the pavement, they generally don't allow the utilities to be put in, but allows the subgrading and getting the road base in during these times. I did hear at some point there were some questions that, they can pave if the temperatures are correct or not correct. I just, showing the picture of that road coming down, initially I thought, well, it has nothing to do with the weather, it's just, it's not even rainy or snowy yet. But it does make sense that if he's not properly allowed to build that, because it's after the 15th of November, then that stuff's gonna happen. I've heard comments, and it's been explained to me that the concern about frost getting into that lower grade prior to paving, but I'm assuming that all of that has to be inspected before paving can get down. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I think all that stuff can be cured. I just hate to see, not having the proper access into those lots, especially like Mr. Guthrie's saying, and causing that runout because he can't get down to where he wants to be, and having these guys have to stop for 6 months. That's a long period of time. I don't know at what point. I think my question would be, if it was July and it hadn't rained, at what point would Mr. Starrett, your department, want to start inspecting the road, right? So if they were getting it down to a base layer and grading it, do you come out to look at the base layer, or what triggers your inspections?
Everything and anything, we will go out and check on what's happening. And, but if they were specifically preparing to prep the road, we would want to see it down to naturally occurring material. The purpose there is to make sure that it hasn't been filled, that it's uncontrolled fill, and that we're on a suitable material. As the contractors in the room will tell you, once you put the bucket in the ground, you never know what you're going to find. And so you find peat, organic materials, that has to be removed and replaced and restored. So we want to see the naturally occurring material before you put in the prescribed 9 and 4, or 8 and 6, however, whatever amounts of the subbase that we put in there. So that would initially be. our first inspection.
And I think, Mr. Staratak, you're right there, we would stay away from the 8 and 6 or the 9 and 4, if you will, because we typically don't install that stuff before water line and storm drain, because it is expensive. That's sort of the good stuff at the top of the road, if you will, prior to pavement. So we get that to a subgrade and then bring the utilities down the middle of the road, the storm drain and the water line, and then bring it back up to the pre-8 and 12, which is the processed gravel, I think is what he speaks of, that gets you fine-tuned for your asphalt. So not having permission to proceed with the water line, and I understood that we got that letter from the water department, and we respect that. But the other stuff is, we would be lucky if we got to that subgrade, I guess, because we would be dealing with the rocks and the stumps and what have you. And again, this may potentially be a 3-week period until we run into January, and if we get a deep freeze, then we're iced up anyway. We can't really pull top and sub out when there's 2 feet of frost. It just doesn't happen. So, it gives us a chance, 3 weeks, to get that site entrance in, stabilized, prepared for the season, gets us as much roadway as we can. It might be 300 feet, 500 feet, whatever it is. And then it gets us access to the first couple lots to start to prep those. And then eventually winter's gonna shut us out. It does every year. It does most years. I don't know about every year, but it does most years. And the site guys, much like the town engineer and any of us, we really don't fight Mother Nature when we get 2 feet of snow or we get 4 feet of frost. It's cost prohibitive.
Yep, okay.
So back to answer the question, right? So I'm okay with them getting that down to the grading things out, certainly not putting in the utilities and the water lines at this point without waiver or the approval of the water commissioners and water superintendent.
So you're good with subgrading, rock removal, and blasting if necessary?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's
Okay,
it.
Great. Darren, do you care to opine?
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that makes sense to me. I can see why, not putting drain installation in and utilities and so forth, but getting down to that initial cut and then being able to access the site in a cleaner way, I think makes sense, and doing what we can during that winter time. So I agree with Mike. I think that makes sense. And then you were saying too there is that prep layer wouldn't be done during this time. That would be done in the spring, once Paul and you guys and your crew has a chance to go look at that.
We haven't heard what they would plan to do. If that's the intention, then yes, we would have to, first of all, make sure that the underlying materials have been undisturbed and are naturally occurring, which will be tricky if they've been exposed to the freezing weather and now they heave, and now they have to, we're gonna have to determine somehow how, geotechnically, how to re-stabilize the underlying materials. Those that, of course, we're in that season now, if we're talking about the springtime, when they would be looking to work in full, that we have the rains and melting snows and all the other, so it'll just be a decision that has to be made in the field. But I don't know how that gets done. I don't know how you, once it's heaved, how you reestablish its natural condition, undisturbed condition. I have to give some thought to that particular part of it.
So, any other comments?
No, I think that,
Okay.
I'm gonna agree with Mike on this, the way this is.
So for me, I guess as the last person to offer an opinion, I guess what I'm concerned about is a couple of things here. Number one, I think we as the board should be aware that we are dealing with something that is, at least in my time, which I'm coming up on 5 years, I've not had to deal with this before, and I don't know if anybody else has. So our decision here would set a precedent, and I think we need to be very careful about setting a precedent that, perhaps developers who may not be as scrupulous and well-meaning as the ones in front of us now, might see, take a look at this and see this as something where, what can be done in, in the winter months. I also think, I know that town engineering sometimes has to rely on third parties because they're not staffed to be able to do all of these inspections. It's not like it's Paul or Jeremy going out to inspect all these things. And in some cases, in many cases, those inspectors are being paid for by the applicants themselves. So I think we should keep all of that in mind as we sort of think about how much we're willing to bend and flex here. I also think this puts additional burden on this board to take this kind of action for every single development that could come before us as we head into the winter months, which I think, I appreciate Bob's comments regarding every site is different and the potential impact to doing things could vary. My opinion is we should probably be clear and distinct as a board on where we think that line is and just be consistent with all projects, because I don't think we want to be mixing and matching and entertaining whatever that particular site does or doesn't, have. So, I hear you guys' points. I don't necessarily disagree that on certain years it may be completely suitable to do the, the subgrading, and if it's a mild winter, it probably doesn't have any impact. Like yourself, I generally tend to defer to town engineering, and in this case, we have, the head of the Public Works Department in front of us, and they're both saying that, once you start ripping up that, once you start grubbing and stumping, you're starting to get into a situation that they find puts us at risk, depending upon the site, depending upon the kind of winter we're gonna have, and whatever else. So, generally speaking, I would align my feelings with them. Okay, so, this is not a public hearing item, but generally when we have something like this, we at least open it up to public comment. I don't know if anybody is here and would like to make a comment specifically on Diane Lane. Yes, they may step up and state their name.
Christine Griggs, I'm at 45 Carlisle Lane Road. First, I would like to say thank you to the developers for fixing the initial issue with the stones going into the road. But it's back again. I had to walk in the road tonight again to bring my dog over to Wilson Farm Road. So, not that I want to see any development going in, but it's happening. I would respectfully request that the board allows them to at least fix the entrance to the road to get rid of the riprap and the mess, because it's just going to keep going into the road. There's riprap by my yard now, which I'm 2 houses down from it. It's getting stuck in the wheels, going down the road. It's going to start when the plows come, it's going to start causing an issue. And again, I had to walk on the road again tonight with my dog at 4:30 when it's getting dark. So if we could at least allow them to fix the main entrance to the road, that would be helpful for the residents and the people traveling on the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mark Slager from Allen Engineering.
Good evening.
Here on one particular item, but not this one, but they all are intermingled. At the last meeting, I started to talk about the applicability of the regulation in question, and I started to talk about where it's located within the regulations, and I'd like to expand on that, if I may, for a few minutes to help provide some clarity on what the regulation was intended to do. If you look at this particular requirement, comes under Article 6 of the subdivision rules and regulations. The first part of Article 6 is Section 218-14, which talks about general requirements. I don't know if he has a chance to pull that up, but under the general requirements, it essentially gives you an overview of how to build a roadway. And it says basically, current Massachusetts Highway Department standards for highways and bridges shall be referred to in any case that's not covered under the subdivision rules and regulations. That's item A. And then the next item is site clearing. And it goes into before clearing and grubbing operations within the project take place, contractor shall make sure that all of the erosion controls are in place and inspected by Town Engineer and Conservation Commission. And that's it for Section 218-14 under general requirements. Then you jump into Section 218-15, which is street grading. It says, first section is the area within the right-of-way lines necessary for the installation of a roadway, sidewalk, utilities, drainage, whatever, shall be cleared and grubbed of brush, roots, stumps, boulders, and the like, to a depth of at least 16 inches below grade, which is basically removing the roots, the top, and the subsoil and whatnot, getting down to the naturally occurring, stable, structural fill. Then after that, it talks about after removing that, the town engineer shall inspect it and require any test holes to verify all of that naturally occurring materials. And then the next section, it starts to talk about after the subgrade has been inspected, you put in your base gravel, which is the first layer of the roadway base itself prior to paving. And then there's another section that talks about the top part of the subbase, and you put that down, you compact it, gets inspected, and then there's another section at the end of that about slope granite curbing. Then the next section goes into surfacing. So surfacing talks about, first, a base course of 4 inches of dense graded crushed stone, Massachusetts specs and everything, graded, compacted, shaped to the roadway crown, and whatnot. And then item B says after dense grade and crushed stone is put on, it tells you how to pave the road, 2.5 inches of binder and whatnot, compacted. And after a winter, it sits through 1 year, you put down the finished course. Now you get to item C. And item C is the regulation in question. It says, no excavation, trenching, paving, or other significant activity shall be allowed within the proposed right-of-way as indicated in the town's street opening permit between November 15th and April 15th. Now, if this regulation was intended to apply to clearing, grubbing, and grading, it would have been in the very beginning of the construction standards, not at the very end of surfacing. So I reached out to somebody who might be familiar with this regulation. I spoke with Chip Barrett yesterday. And Chip's recollection is that that regulation was intended to restrict any work within a new right-of-way or an existing right-of-way after November 15th and after the binder has been in place. And what he found happened in prior developments was that people would go back in, they'd rush through the construction season, get the binder down on the road, and then during the winter or early spring, they might cut into the binder, put in some services for houses or whatnot, not properly compact it, put another layer of binder down, and it didn't sit through the winter, and then they come back in and expect to put the finished pavement down. So this was done to prevent that. It was also done to prevent any work into existing streets. So like Dave was mentioning, the shoulder work and the crushed stone, they weren't allowed to clear and grub in the existing right-of-way. And it didn't matter whether it was a public way or some of the many unaccepted streets that the town maintains still. So that's why it says public or private. But it also mentions, as indicated in the town's street opening permit. So if you look at that, it only applies, that restriction only applies if you're working under the provisions of a street opening permit. I don't know if you have the street opening permit regs. I haven't have it on a flash drive.
Oh, Mike Wells will be so happy to see you put a flash drive into your computer.
I'm not looking.
If this goes pink and we get ransomed. Seriously.
All right, anyway, to start with, very first item of section 1 of the permit, street opening permit. It says, no person or individual, corporation, or other type of entity shall open a trench in or disturb the surface of any existing street or way or any proposed street or way in a proposed subdivision for any of the following purposes: installing, repairing, and/or maintaining any duct, conduit, sleeve, pipe, or other structure to be used for the distribution of wastewater, sewage, storm, potable water, brook, watercourse, oil, gas, whatever, until a permit is granted by the highway superintendent. So the work that we're requesting under all of these applications doesn't appear to require a street opening permit. So therefore, it wouldn't be governed by 21816 number C. So that's just information that really wasn't reviewed last time. I know town council reviewed this, but if you look at just section C under 21816 and look at that one paragraph, you can interpret that as meaning you can't do any work within the right-of-way in that period of time.
Yep.
But it's taken out of context if you don't read all of Article 6, which is the, where it occurs in the regulations, which is extremely critical. So we understand Paul's and all his concerns with respect to runoff and whatnot. We have to deal with runoff in the summertime too. We have to deal with, if we don't get the roadway paved by November 15th, we still have to deal with frost heaves in the winter and deal with it in the spring. So if we do the roadway base work in September, and then we work through the winter on the lots and whatnot, we still have freezing and thawing situations, and we can compact those in the spring and then pave in the early summer. So I don't see why it would matter if we put in the roadway gravel and whatnot, not the compacted dense grade that you put in just prior to paving, but at least get everything up to subgrade in December, January, or, you know, sit through February and beginning of March, and then pick it up later on, as long as you're not dealing with a lot of frost. But you can get that compacted base down so that when the weather turns better, you can go in and put your trenching for utilities in. So I think that hopefully provides a little bit of sheds a little bit of light on where we are and what the purpose of the regulation was.
Appreciate the research. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, good evening. I'm Chauncey True, Green Eagles Road. I'm speaking as an individual, not for the Water Commissioners tonight. Since the prior speaker got into the weeds here on the regulation, I like to, just for my own edification here, so I understand this regulation here, on section 218-7, the waiver of compliance. If Joe could bring that up. I just have a specific question here. There's a lot of stuff in that reg. And this pertains to the requirements that the petitioner has to provide for the waiver. And I'm interested in the last sentence there. All requests for waivers shall be accompanied by a letter signed by the applicant, blah, blah, blah. This letter should include an estimate of the cost savings in initial cost and annual maintenance. I could not find that in the packet, so if you could illuminate me and show me where
asked for the waivers at this point. That's for the next meeting.
That's, okay, that's what.
They haven't asked the waivers yet.
Okay, so that would be provided in the next, okay.
What they want us to do is say, this work requires a waiver, this work does not require a waiver.
Okay.
That's what the discussion tonight.
Okay, I just saw that regulation, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Waterman, site engineer for Diane Lane, Land Tech Consultants. And I think going back to Doug's original letter, and the items that we're requesting, item number 1, the work that were non-inspectional related items during a non-frost time. We're not asking to work and do any of this work when it's frozen ground, when it's snowing out. I think it's important to reiterate that. You know, we're just asking to go through and do the preliminary site work to get things going in that road. As Mark had alluded to, if this is done in September, we wouldn't even be here right now. They would have gotten their road to rough grade, and then they'd be working on their lots. And they'd be off and running, and that road would be subject to the same exact freezing and thawing as what we're concerned or what is expressed if we do it now versus if we had done it a month ago. I don't think there's any issue with bringing that road to subgrade. Subjecting the road to the freeze thaw, no different than what it would do any other time of year. They're not going to bring in any road work, any of the work to construct the roadway, any of the work to construct the utilities, any of the work to construct anything that requires inspections. I just think it's important that the ancillary work that we're talking about, I don't think has any issue, especially if it's done during non-frozen times.
Thanks.
Actually, Matt, do you, as an engineer, I assume you do work in other towns as well. Do you see the ability to do this type of work in other
It's
towns in
not
the
to
area?
this extent. I mean, I think it is consistent with the paving. I mean, there are towns that will work through the winter with paving and utility works, National Grid in particular. The paving plants typically close down, or they charge an exorbitant amount of money to get the paving, so people don't, it comes cost prohibitive at that point. But usually with general site work, like what we're talking, item 1 in particular, it hasn't come up where they've shut down sites in its entirety,
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
Thanks.
Anybody else from the audience? Okay, so we are where we are. So we have, I guess, a request then, all that we were asked for then, and this is to sort of define for you, or to hear from the board where we sort of think that line is, and I think we've provided that. Are we, Joe, are we taking a specific vote on Diane Lane this evening, or are we just giving guidance to the applicant so that they can come forward next meeting with a waiver request?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be best for the board to come to some consensus, whether that's through a vote or otherwise, to give clarity to the applicant, what you consider to be significant activity under your rules and regulations, and what would not be considered significant activity, so that way they have an understanding of what would require a waiver request to do work within the November 15th, April 15th timeframe.
Yep. Well, it sounded like from what I heard that 2 members would clearly be okay with item 1. 1 member clearly would not, and 2 members either would partially agree with what's in number 1. Well, actually, I guess.
Yeah.
No, I guess the other 3 members, 2 members are okay with everything in number 1. The other 3 are okay with either parts of number 1, or it is site and it's either site dependent or other conditionally dependent on how far into items listed in item number 1 they would be okay with.
And it
So
sounded like
that's
nobody
what I
was-
heard anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounded like nobody was thinking that item 2 would be
No.
not significant.
I didn't hear anybody say item 2 would be acceptable, unless
Yeah.
I'm misunderstanding.
No.
I have a question.
So I don't know at this point if a vote is even helpful. Yes.
If I may, I think, based on Mark's edification relative to a trench permit, item 2 is off the table.
Okay.
He made that pretty clear in his edification to us in the board, that there's a trench permit required. The trench permit does not allow for that after November 15th.
Right.
I don't believe you have the right to waive that either. That's a trench permit established by,
Right.
the town engineer, the highway superintendent. Relative to number 1, though, based on what Mr. Slager and Mr. Waterman mentioned, I would ask that we maybe get Mr. Starrett's opinion, that if, his concern is that if you get down to that subgrade, that it's subject to heaving over the winter, and then it's uncertainty in the spring. Mr. Waterman brought up a good point. If we were in here in October, and we pulled the stumps and pulled the rocks and blasted and brought that to subgrade, because what I heard, I think, was subgrade was the big concern through the winter. If we did that in October, and we were working on the lots, how would that roadway be any different in the spring if we did that work in October, because it's down to subgrade, versus if we do it now? If he could expand on that, that would help us
The pavement,
understand.
you would have pavement, you'd have a base course of material covering and protecting the underlying materials, as opposed to having trucks going back and forth, and then, the afternoon sun comes out, warms up the surface, it becomes greasy and mucky and is moving, those,
I
yeah,
think-
as opposed to having asphalt down.
No,
That's the big thing.
I'm sorry, I wasn't alluding to asphalt. If we started this November 1st, or October 20th, we were able to get to that top and soil removed, Paul, I don't know what you want to call it, if you want to call that subgrade or what have you. That's where we would get this winter.
Yep.
And Mr. Starrett's concern with that's going to heave and settle, and you're going to be,
You're saying conceivably you could be at the same spot if you
Same
started
conditions.
October 15th and November 1st and got to November 15th, that we would be concerned now that you might get to and then have to stop because it gets cold enough and
correct.
frost sets.
You'd have the same conditions on that, which has happened in my career for 30 years, quite honestly, Mr. So I'm just wondering what Paul's concern is, how it would differ if it was a month ago versus, and we had it to that subgrade and then it rode the winter route. How would things be different in the spring?
So again, to do the work on the lot, and it's my understanding, and Joe can correct me here, the road needs a base course before you can get a foundation permit or building permits or anything else. And
He's correct, but we're not proposing that. We'd be proposing to strip, to pull stumps on the lots, to pull rocks on the lots, potentially blast on the lot, subgrade the lot. We can do that this winter, I think, by right. So we'd be doing the same thing. If we started this in October, we'd be in there to this road at subbase.
Yep.
The November 15th would hit, the potential frost would hit, we'd be working on our lots. It would help alleviate the problem out in the road with the stone. But what would be different in the spring with that right-of-way sub-base, freezing and thawing? What would be different? If we started it now or started it a month ago and it rode the winter in the same condition?
Yep.
What would ultimately be different?
I can't anticipate an answer other than the one that I've already given. In that the soils will now be exposed to freezing and thawing on a regular basis, the truck traffic. So now you've got to remove, in my opinion, when it comes time for the sub-base to be inspected and approved, there'll be more stripping there. I don't have the plans in front of me either, so I'm not, I can't say whether or not there's cut and fills in these proposed layouts.
Right.
So if you're talking about doing those operations in this time of year, but we're not talking about November 1st, so this hypothetical is a little confusing. We're talking about it's rain and snow and freezing cold weather now. So to start that work now is different than if they had done it in October. It established, a compacted road, and we're working from there, even without the pavement. Then that wouldn't be the concern.
Yeah, and I mean, I love a good engineering debate as much as the next guy. Normally, my expertise is computers, not civil engineering, but I think we're at a point of professional differences. I'm not sure we're gonna convince each other one way or the other at this point. So, I'm trying to think of an efficient way for this board to, Joe, are we still trying to get to a vote to give the applicant some more direct guidance for a future waiver? Is that where we're going with this?
What would be ideal, I think, is if we had something, whether it's all or part of item 1 on here that you would find to be not significant.
Yeah, I don't.
If that's not, just for clarification, Dylan.
Yeah, please.
If we came to agreement and said, okay, we're comfortable with what is proposed in item 1 being done. If we just said that, because we're having a discussion about this, request to perform work, would that require the applicant coming back with a waiver to do that? Or if we say in this case, we're okay with the items in number 1 being done and vote on that, I think that would be done right now. We don't need necessarily a waiver if we approve it.
Okay. Right. Okay.
To throw a monkey wrench in things, and again, to come back, I appreciate Diane Lane is the worst case of the 3. I appreciate the applicant would like to do some lot clearing and such as long as possible over the winter, and I have no problem with it. I think independent of the discussion here, at least the beginning part of the proposed Diane Lane, something has to be done to it to create a construction road. So if you're creating a construction road, would you be removing the top and the subsoil anyway to create a construction road?
Means and methods would be up to the contractor and developer to tell us what they would want to do. We don't get into those details.
Something has to be done to prevent additional runoff and allow the trucks to get in to do the site clearing.
The plan, and maybe the engineer record could speak to the design of that construction entrance. Yes, we would be pulling that top and sub down and getting that road graded to a rough grade of the future grade, if you will, Kate, of the roadway, so we get rid of sort of that steep access way, which was not permitted by your board for obvious reasons, cars slide out there. We'd get rid of all of that so that that slope into the site is much less. We would have to stabilize the banks with a shredded root or some other geotech to stabilize it for the winter. We'd have to do that in the spring or the summer anyway, because we'd want it to be stable, instead of washing in the road and then out onto Carlisle. So, yes, we would be pulling that top and sub out to prep that entryway accordingly. And then, once that's done, really, the rest of it is shedding away from the site, or away from the roadway, so a lot less risk, I guess, Kate, at that point, if we did the entire thing.
And I think that reiterates what Dave had discussed earlier, where, the rock had kind of gotten pushed into the topsoil, and then there was tracking that occurred out on the Carlisle Road with those initial pictures, and that would be prevented by cutting in, stripping the topsoil, some of the subsoil, cutting down on the grade would certainly help, but that would allow us to build the construction entrance per the plan.
And the other thing is, it sounds as though all of this work really needs a pre-construction meeting anyway, so that your contractors know, everybody signed off on A and B, but nothing else, or this is what you can do now, and then.
And that's, just to clarify, Mr. Chair, because there's been some allusions to the fact that there are things that are not inspected, or that aren't officially inspected or formally inspected. Let me clear that up right now. The engineering department will inspect every project that you have approved to make sure that they're doing what you have to do. We have to be out on this job site. If they're on the site, we have to be out there inspecting. If for no other reason, they have an MS4 Nippedy's construction general permit, which requires, the town is required to make sure that there's no runoff from a construction site before the construction, during the construction, and after the construction. Those are all EPA regulations that we have to follow. So we are going to be staffing all of these projects, and which will be a separate issue for discussion as this goes on further. But I just want to clarify that there's nothing that the contractor or developer will be doing that is not inspected.
We agree with that. We didn't mean to allude otherwise.
Sure.
We agree with that.
Just to finish up my thoughts, I mean, I'm okay with the tree and the brush cutting.
Yep.
Stump pulling, I don't want to know what the difference is between that and grubbing. The others I'm less comfortable with, because there's a lot of ifs there with respect to blasting and such, and how much blasting is going to be involved, and what the ramifications are. But independent, it would need to have the pre-construction meeting, and that the construction road, however, is built so that they can safely get into the interior without causing damage to Carlisle Road. And however you and they agree upon that is not my
Which is
bailiwick.
very easy, actually, because it's all performance-based. You know, I unfortunately did not realize that we had another breakout today. We can't be out there all the time right now, but that's something that'll have to be taken care of.
Yeah, we appreciate that. So, Kate, if I may, it sounds like you're drawing the line somewhere between.
Somewhere around.
It sounds like you're after subgrading, but maybe before or just after rock removal, but certainly blasting's off the table.
But blasting's gonna require its own permit anyway. It just can't go and blast,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's gonna have its own standards.
And that, I know they have to do the videotaping of the neighbors and
so-
all of that.
I think they're protected there and under that book.
No,
Inspections, I'm sure, they have to go
Chairman?
with that too.
Could I
Yeah.
just throw one comment in?
I'm really trying to move us along, though. so-
I know, but I've tried to not say much. But I do have to say two things, or I'm not doing a good job for my clients. One is, without question, Mr. Slager did an amazing job at reviewing your zoning bylaw.
Agreed.
And why it was written and what its intention was. And I think we can show that over the last 25 years in this town, that is the way that bylaw was applied. I have never, in all of my 25 years of being here, had to come before the planning board to get permission to cut trees, grub, or pull stumps on a subdivision project. I'm sorry, I've just never seen it. And that was because the bylaw was intended to prevent intrusion into the road when there was already a surface or otherwise. But nevertheless, I know you and everyone else is trying to make sure that the town is well protected. But I do want, we're pointing at an erosion problem that occurred, and we're considering not allowing this kind of work because there might be erosion. Well, there's erosion with this kind of work 12 months out of the year. It is always incumbent on the developer that they have to control their erosion. So pulling stumps out in December is not creating any more of an erosion risk than if we pull them out in May during the rainstorms. Nor does it relieve the developer from being fully 100% responsible for controlling all erosion. So the intention of this bylaw was not to stop work because we wanted to protect against erosion. That's not the case. If that was the case, you wouldn't allow any work on a site, well, anytime, because again, the point is, this work is not to be allowed if it's determined that it would result in a subpar roadway. So we don't want to be trenching in the winter, we don't want to be putting in lines in the winter, because we get settling problems, we get heaving problems, and the road is ultimately not built correctly. But I don't see how allowing us to pull a stump out in and do grubbing in December is going to in any way potentially make that road any less correct than if we did that in July. And quite frankly, if we can't pull the stumps and pull the rocks and grub, we really can't do anything. We can't do anything.
Appreciate your comments, Attorney DeShanes, and I do think that where we're trying to get to is being able to take a vote on what in item number 1 we're prepared to take a vote on, so that you can do something.
I understand that, but you're trying to figure out which of those things should be allowed or not allowed, because theoretically you feel that doing that in the winter is going to result in a subpar road. I'm saying that none of that work affects the quality of the road, whether you do it in July or December.
Well,
Or is it governed by the regulation?
You apparently also, I mean, are you the one who signed this letter?
Yes.
Well, so you apparently also think, weather pending, you want to proceed with putting in water lines and storm drain installations.
No, I wrote that to ask the board whether you thought those kinds of things could be done and be protective of the roadway. We've obviously heard tonight that no one feels that. But I do feel very strongly.
You didn't take it out of your letter saying, well, it would be preposterous to ask for that, doing that. So I have to assume that if we said yes, you'd be willing to allow your client to do it, right?
So you're saying because I asked for that,
No,
I'm out of control asking for the first
just
step?
need to let us go through the process here.
I
So, Mr.
actually asked
Chair-
for that, sir.
Okay.
Because we've done it historically, but I get what I heard tonight, that there's no way in heck that's getting approved, so,
Number 2, no.
yeah, I agree with that.
All right,
We have
so-
done it
So,
historically.
Mr. Chair, a part of number 2 belongs in number 1, and I tried to make this point earlier, but I'll be more clear about it.
Yeah.
It should be understood that the items in number 1 require daily inspection paid by the developer, and they should not be allowed, and this is the important part, if the inspector deems the weather conditions unsuitable. So now I've got an inspector who's working for the developer that I need to supervise and make sure that they are doing what they need to do. So you'll need to help me understand what is it, what are the weather conditions that are unsuitable, so that I can let the inspector know that this is it, that this weather condition is unsuitable, and now you need to stop. Because that's where the problems are going to occur in the field when I'm out, when we're doing our inspections. And that does need to be in the first part.
Just to clarify, they don't work for us. We pay into a fund and the town hires it.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there are industry standards for
Right,
this.
and I misspoke to say they work for them, but they,
No, they're paid from
They
a
work-
fund that is supplied by the applicant.
Thanks to
Got it.
them.
Yeah.
So, Joe, could you pull up the, whatever it is, 218-17, the actual, aren't the weather conditions spoken to in that?
Yeah. At least for the rain and such.
Rain, snow, 40 degrees,
for
Isabel,
paving,
below,
the paving operations, I think the.
temperature under 40 degrees,
Periods of rain,
periods of rain, or
snow.
snow, right?
Well, this is for the, again, this is, I think, referring to
Street opening.
Significant
paving.
stuff.
Right, but town engineer is now saying that we need to give some guidance to what would be the appropriate conditions for us to say.
I think that's
activities
kind
must
of throwing that on us, really, Mr. Starrett. I mean, we're not engineers, we all said we're not engineers.
Right.
And now we're throwing on us when we should decide what the weather conditions should be for these guys to work.
I would have to think,
But-
if we're,
But in his defense, he's also outlined what he would prefer, which is to do nothing, and we're considering doing something different. So I don't think it's unfair for him to say, tell me the parameters under which it's okay.
I would think if we're bringing in an inspector, it's gonna be an engineer
No, not necessarily.
necessarily,
No.
but at least versed in this industry.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, probably a retired contractor or a worker, who knows? We have to start that process.
So we're bringing this person on really to be our eyes and ears in the field. And, you know, I would hope in the interview process, when we talk to the person, we would understand, hopefully, that they're competent, that, you know, if there's conditions that it looks like they're gonna be putting this potential road, future road at risk, we'd rather not continue. If it's sideways, if it's a blizzard, and if it's below 30 degrees, or whatever it is. So, again, I'm not an engineer, too.
Or if it looks as though that the work that they have to do is gonna cause a potential problem.
Well, that's the thing. So I think that's why we hire this consultant or inspector to go out there and do this for us. Which is, you know, again, even if I'm out there, I won't know the conditions that are gonna lead to a potential poor road.
And certainly didn't mean to trigger anything, other than the fact I'm gonna need to give direction, and if we're gonna, if you're having this discussion now, it'd be a good time to establish what those parameters are, because we've never done this before in Westford.
So.
And, well, hold on, and I will say that, you know, the applicant themselves said that, like, at some point, you're gonna get enough frost that operations would stop anyway. Now, we're being asked to be, I guess, meteorologists, because I don't know how many days of sub-freezing temperatures it takes to reach a frost depth of 16 inches either, so, you know what I mean, like, yeah, we're being.
There really is an industry standard out there, Mr. O'Connor. It has been for years. It's many people work through the winter on road construction like this, not trenching, not paving, but rough grading like this, pulling rocks so that you can get vehicles in there to work on your lot, pulling stumps so you can get vehicles in there to work on your lot. This stuff, I respect Mr. Starrett's opinion that it's never happened in Westford, but it happens in a lot of other towns. I have done this in Westford historically. Maybe they were private roadways, so the engineer wasn't involved, but it's been happening for a long time. There are standards set by these third-party inspectors that say, this isn't right, we can't do this. And our site guys are gonna feel that way. Our site guy is well-respected. I think Mr. Starrett would say he's well-respected. And I think that's sort of where you get your protection with Mr. Starrett and the DPW director. When we have a pre-construction hearing, they get to determine who the reputable contractors are at that point, and sort of how much leeway they can give them. And that happens in all facets of the industry, based on reputation. It always has.
Did you have a comment, Mr. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a matter of beating a dead horse, though.
Oh, okay.
You know, I was just questioning whether or not the activity that he's proposing to do is actually even governed by the regulations, since it doesn't require a street opening permit.
Why doesn't it, because you're
Because
putting in a new
It doesn't require a street
street?
opening permit, as it says in the
It
regulations.
says, as indicated in the town street opening permit.
Yeah, but they're creating a new street, which means they're have a street opening.
But the street opening permit is very specific. When it's required. And it doesn't require, it's not required for clearing, grubbing, and bringing the road to subgrade.
Okay.
So therefore, it shouldn't even be required under this regulation. We shouldn't even be here. We should be able to just go out and work after November 15th and do what we wanted to do until we get to the point where we need a street opening.
Well, to clarify, a street opening permit would have been needed to establish a construction entrance anyway.
Right.
You know, you're.
So, thank you.
Under the regulation, you would have been limited to access to your site. You know, at this point, we're somewhat backed into a corner because we've already started work and now we've created an unsafe condition which we are now forced to deal with. So I just want to make the clarification that, you know, that work would have had to been done and established prior to November 15th, so.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments, Kate? Because you were sort of offering an opinion on roughly where, can we go to the, thank you. Bob, we haven't gone to you in a while. Do you have any updated thoughts on where in the request from Attorney DeShane and the work proposed for Diane Lane, item number 1? Do you have any thoughts on things you are amenable to versus not amenable to?
I've looked at this in order, and I'm fine with, I guess, up to grubbing. I'm looking at the order and wondering if the ordering was correct. I look at subgrading versus rock removal. Does subgrading occur before rock removal, or vice versa?
No, those weren't put in any order.
Okay.
You're correct, Bob. That would be last. Subgrading would be last. Yep. We would want to get those obstacles out of the way in order to be able to subgrade to get the other vehicles in safely to work on the lots. Not the home construction of the lots, but the preparation of the lots. That is the goal, to get a pathway in there so that we can travel safely, manage that entryway, and do whatever we can for probably the next 4 or 5 weeks, and then start up again sometime in March.
So, Bob, am I understanding that you're good with bush cutting, stump pulling, grubbing, and rock removal, excluding subgrading and blasting?
Yeah, that's definitely excluding subgrading and blasting, so, I mean, I'm being swayed to allow what you just said, yes.
I'm saying,
Again, as long as the conditions into and out of the site are properly maintained, because that is what concerned me today with what I've seen, but yes, I'm fine with that.
I'm in the same boat. Anyone want to put forward a motion before we
May I add one?
to hear more comments?
Sorry, I'm sorry. If I could only add blasting, if the appropriate parties allow blasting, being the fire department, being the expert, if they allow it, would you be okay with it? They are the expert.
And Dave, you perhaps should include in there, if you're not gonna blast a rock hammer, if that's rock removal already, if you mean by rock removal, using the hammer, you should probably clarify that, but if, were you gonna blast separately as opposed to?
I think,
Because if you hit ledge and it's weathered and you can use a hammer, that you don't need to blast, but are you saying that's rock removal? They might be thinking rock removal is,
That's what
you have
I
a boulder, you pull a boulder out.
I was thinking it was pull a boulder out, prep that area. If we had to hammer, I don't see the harm in hammering in the winter, quite honestly.
It's just another activity, and again, one that, especially outside the right-of-way, again, the engineering department, the
We look at those
Public
items,
Works.
blasting and rock hammering, if you will, best suited in the winter when everybody's inside and the windows are closed. When you get into the spring months and the summer months, people hate it. I hate it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So if you can do it in the winter when nobody's around, it's a better time to do it. But I would say, Paul's point there, if we get into that blasting scenario, guys, that you have the fire department and their experts, if they allow it, I would hope that maybe you would. That would be my only other caveat, and then I won't speak again, I promise.
So with that, I have a question, I guess, maybe I'll direct it to Paul Starrett in town. Can you tell us if there's a difference in the transference of energy due to blasting in frozen soil versus unfrozen soil?
But just from this is a personal anecdote at the highway facility, which is located next to Graniteville Materials, which blasts on a regular basis, including today, unannounced, and knocked a few pictures off my wall. But it does appear, it's anecdotal, but I'm sure the experts would agree that the winter months do bring a little bit more of a, shock, but I can't say that professionally.
Well, again, I think we rely on the experts, because right now, if it is a greater shock wave, we're in a non-frost setting right now, so we can't really make that determination. I would suggest we do have experts for that. They have to have a third-party survey, they're licensed by the state, and they have to have approval from the fire department, so I would think I would rely on those experts.
Dave is correct to say that they're given so many feet per second in a threshold that they have to satisfy. They test for it. If they fail, so they'll stay in that window.
They are very, very liable.
I move that, subject to a pre-construction meeting and approval by all parties, that we agree that work such as tree and brush clearing, stump pulling, grubbing, and rock removal that is not jackhammering or whatever you want to call it, could be considered as being not significant work related to road construction.
And friendly amendment, blasting if approved by the appropriate parties, including the fire department and the other organizations?
Or by a permit.
Or by a permit?
Sure.
Permit's the right way to do it.
Sure.
There's a motion on the floor. I'll second it. Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike? Aye. Darren?
I would say nay, just because it's not, you left out subgrading by,
Right.
okay, I'd say nay.
I say aye. So that passed. Okay.
There you go.
So we've given you everything in
Direction.
item 1 other than subgrading.
There's a compromise in there, right, somewhere, so thank you for your
Somewhere.
time.
Somewhere in there is a compromise, yes.
As long as there just has to be that pre-construction meeting that work isn't being done.
It was contingent on,
Yeah.
okay.
This will allow us to get that front area
We'll let you get in there anyway.
where everybody wants it,
Yep.
so.
All right, that was
There
Diane.
was a-
item B, Diane Lane subdivision.
Are you okay with it? It doesn't, I move that it applies to the others as well.
I don't know if, well, I don't know if that satisfies the applicants, because the scope of work
Yeah, it's a
might
little
be
different scope. I think we should look
I
at.
think we have to go through these, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we do too.
I tried.
All right, I know you did, and I appreciate it. Item C, general business, we have a request to perform work within the right-of-way between December 15th and April 15th, PB 2133, and that is Cloverleaf Fields subdivision. Oh, yes, okay. All right, Cloverleaf Fields. We might be able to, well,
Well, Mr. Chairman, in the hopes of saving some time, technically, you know, the list is the same, except, as you may recall, this project is a little unique in that the existing home sits in the middle of where the road's gonna be. So we'd like to, for this particular project, we'd like to add just removing the structures from the surface of the earth that happen to sit partially on what will be the right-of-way.
okay. So, and Bob, if you're following along, we're on the list for Cloverleaf. So, I mean, I think in this one, unless anybody has a real issue with raising the existing dwelling, which I'm not sure why we would, but unless somebody has an issue with that, I think we'd be, if we're following what we did with the last one, we'd be saying everything up to number 6. We'd be saying everything 1 through 5 is yes, not including 6. Let me be clear.
Yes.
If we were to follow the same protocol
Yeah.
with the last one.
So, yeah, removing topsoil and subsoil, yeah. I don't know what other materials,
We're not allowing them to place and grade sub-base, which is,
no, but I don't know what other materials that would be considered unsuitable, that's new.
The placing and grading is particularly egregious for,
Yeah.
winter conditions.
Yeah, we're saying we're not gonna,
well, I'm assuming since they're ripping out a house, there could be, who knows what's filled under the house, I guess, you know what I mean? I don't know what they're removing when they knock down the house to make it ready to accept a roadway, you know what I mean?
Yeah, means and methods, again, which is one of our biggest challenges, is that the means and methods are up to the contractor, and,
Yep.
we have some parameters that we can nudge and push in one direction, and it's always negotiating in the field, Mr. Chair, which is what we do.
And Mr. Chairman, as Kate said earlier, this would also be subject to a pre-construction meeting where the distinct specifics on how you're gonna remove the house and what you're gonna do would be addressed and presented for everyone's approval.
Right.
But bottom line is, we wanna do just pretty much what you did in the last list. We'll remove the sub-base grading and compacting from the list, and I think we'll be consistent with the previous.
You okay with the unhappy compromise?
That's fine.
Bob, any comments here?
No, I agree with everything there, as long as it's not the roadway.
Right, as long as we're not doing number 6. Kate, would you?
I'm fine with that. Oh, you want me to do this?
Would you be interested in putting forward a motion?
Yeah, actually, Joe points out that number 5 is subgrading.
That's removing subsoil.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking
Right.
about this. It is slightly
Yeah.
different.
Yes, it is. That would be the subgrading activity that you didn't allow on the
Well,
other.
we allowed subsoil before. We didn't, but not anything below.
Technically, right, no, in the last one, we allowed
We
like rock removal and stuff like that.
Well,
which
we
is
removed soil and we allowed soil and subsoil as well.
No, not subgrading.
Well, we
put the
didn't do
subgrading.
subgrading, but there was a mention of subsoil.
I'm confused though, why is number 6 here? It says grade. I would think that,
Oh.
number 6 in that last list says grade.
Okay.
We have a big fill down the end.
Yeah.
When it was coming up in the cul-de-sac.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
what, to bring it up to about the grade, that's all we're.
Yeah, it's a different
So
animal.
number 6 is putting in the fill, number 5 is
removing it, that's the subgrading it, so,
To the grade, subgrade.
and there's just no way to do that in cold weather conditions.
Which, 5?
5 or 6, well, 5, yeah, you could, physically could be done, we're recommending that it not be in the public way, but 6, you can't do in the cold weather, I mean.
All right, so we're saying one.
Can't
through-
achieve compaction without moisture control, and you have no moisture control when it's
Yeah.
below freezing.
Okay, so we'd be 1 through 4 here then.
1 through 4, yeah. So
Do you
for,
anticipate any rock on the site? Is that
We have
something-
it's like an old horse farm, it's all grass.
Biggest jinx in the history of the planning board. You're paying for the dynamite now.
I move that, with the condition of a pre-construction meeting prior to any work, that the planning board considers the removal of the existing structure, the cutting of trees, removal of stumps and brush, and grubbing of the roadway, and stockpiling of loam with erosion control measures in place do not constitute significant work with respect to roadway construction.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, one more.
One more. Where's Mike?
I'll leave him.
Mike's gotta come on back.
He probably had to take a break like I do, but.
All right, guys, take care.
What are those, Doug?
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Doug, what are those?
If he joins us, we can.
These have to do with copies of the final plans for the Mylar signing.
All right. We are on to, okay, our next general business topic
Oh,
is.
I know, he recuses himself.
Request to perform work within the right-of-way between December 15th, April 15th for PB 2024, the Colonel Rolls Drive subdivision. So,
So, Mr. Chairman, in keeping with the last two hearings, I've numbered the 5 articles that we requested work for, and I would submit that 1 and 2 are consistent with,
Yep.
previously stuff allowed, whereas 3 and 4 were expressly not allowed in the next 2. But I would like to give Mr. Slager an opportunity to talk to you about number 5, because that has to do with retaining wall, conservation.
and this is the piece of work that you said is actually advantageous to be done at this time of year.
Yes.
We kind of covered this in the last meeting.
But you also said that you were going to request a waiver for that work anyway.
Well,
We did.
we requested a waiver to do the work, but it all depends on what happens tonight. So if tonight you determined that all of this work was significant and we needed a waiver, we went and applied for the waiver. But we can withdraw that waiver request
Right.
depending on what gets approved tonight.
And waivers mean 6 weeks, as we found out from Mr. Deshane in the last meeting.
Yep.
So it would be, I think in this one, what we're talking about is 1, 2, and 5.
Yep.
So the other ones were fine. Why is this one any different that would make it much more significant?
If Mr. Slager could tell us about 5,
Okay.
what that is.
The retaining walls. These are precast concrete block units. There's basically a concrete face that's 4 feet tall by 8 feet long, and they have this concrete T on the back of them, or U actually on the back of them. And you basically set those, you remove all the top and subsoil, you put in a stone base, and you set it so that the face is about a foot below grade, and that prevents it just from kicking out. And that sets on a crushed stone base, so there's no frost involved. And then you backfill at least the U section with crushed stone typically. And then beyond the crushed stone, you would use whatever fill is necessary for the roadway. What we'd like to do is just get in and clear and grub that section of roadway and put in just the first course of the wall. So we've got at least a 4-foot area, the full width of the pavement, and the completed right-of-way to work with. I did request putting in, the roadway fill and bringing it up to subgrade. Apparently, that's not gonna fly. But at least if we could get that section of wall in, you know, we've got about 600 or 700 feet of wall, and it's not a bad time of year to do it because we're not dealing with the spring mud. Not to say it's not gonna be muddy, but I think this can certainly be done this time of year without any issues. Just putting in the stone, putting in the blocks. They're not really, at this level, all they are is butting face to face. They're not interlocked at this level. They don't interlock until you get up to the next course, which is really the top of the wall, because these walls are, you know, maybe 6 or 7 feet at the highest.
How far down do you have to dig those in?
Well, the bottom of is gonna be about a foot below grade. But you wanna dig out the top and subsoil and rock and whatnot, and fill it back up with crushed stone.
Yeah.
To make a level base for it. You run a compactor over it, and then you set the block up.
Yep.
And then you just backfill it from there. And that just gives us that much more work that we can get done this time of year as opposed to waiting till middle of April to start that.
And
We did also receive Conservation Commission approval to work after December 1st, and that was one of the items that they allowed
That was
us
for the
to do.
stream crossing, I believe, Mr. Chair, not this
Yeah.
retaining wall. You didn't receive permission, did you receive permission from the Conservation Commission to work on the retaining wall?
We did, yes.
Okay.
And the culvert. They gave us permission to do the culvert, but we're not gonna do that right now, because in thinking about the culvert, we would need to bring the road up to subgrade.
Yep.
To get over the top of the new culvert. And if we get halfway and the weather turns foul, then we've blocked our access to the site. So we're gonna do the culvert later on in the year. So what we're gonna do is keep the existing culvert in place and just put in the wall on both sides of the road, and then just get everything prepped so that we have a good access into the road. And we have a decent amount of work just for the 2 detention basins, detention areas, the subsurface, lot prep and whatnot, stripping the lots, stripping the rest of the road, stockpiling the loam, and we have plenty of room on the site to stockpile everything and make sure we have all our erosion controls in place. We're also required to have erosion controls across the road at the end of each day to prevent any erosion. That's required whether it's, no matter what time of year it is, up until paving. So I think from an erosion control standpoint, we're in good shape. And also at the very front of the road, it actually slopes down away from Hartford Road into the site.
Yep.
So there'll be less chance of anything getting tracked out onto Hartford Road.
Yep.
Can I just ask for clarification on what is the foul weather that they do not want to work, or they will not, that you will not allow them to work in, you know?
I guess it depends on what we're doing. The wall can actually, you know, once we're prepped for the wall and have the stone pad in for the wall, we can do that in pretty much anything, as long as the contractors are comfortable doing it. We don't want to do it in 3 feet of snow, for sure, but if it's a light rain, we can work in the light rain as long as, you know, nothing's getting washed out, but as long as the crushed stone base is set for the wall. But other than that, we would leave it up to the inspector as far as any of the other site work.
Do I understand that the wall would then be freestanding because you're not going to be able to backfill the wall if you got frozen material out there?
Putting in the first block.
We're putting in the first course. It is.
So there'll be no backfilling is my...
Well, we will only backfill just adjacent to the wall with crushed stone.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be compacted like your.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at,
gravel
is they're not going to be putting
Right.
earth and materials apart from the stone.
And packing, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it's only the first 4 feet, then whatever the existing grade is, the construction vehicles don't care what the slope is and such.
And to be honest, having that wall in place will be a lot better from an erosion control standpoint, because everything will be contained within the wall itself, within the right-of-way, as opposed to getting off the edge of the roadway down into the wetland. Although we will have silt fence and straw wattles there, but this adds that just extra level of protection.
Okay. So, anything further?
Nope, that's it.
All right, so, is there a motion on,
I move that pending or condition with a
Did I just say something?
Well,
We vote.
I don't know, Bob hasn't really had a chance either.
So,
I don't have an issue with this at all.
No.
But if we are following this bylaw, which, like, is driving me nuts, I would just say this is significant. Right? Putting in these concrete blocks would be significant. So while I think he should be able to do this, I think this makes sense. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels it. I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into this now.
Yeah. We should be a waiver request.
It should be a waiver request. And I hate that it should be, because I think it makes sense. But if we're following the stupid bylaw,
Subdivision rules and regulations, it's not a.
thank you, Kate. You know what I'm saying.
This is the one that you, really? Interesting. Okay.
Bob, do you have any comments?
Not beyond what's been said, I'm fine.
Well, you can vote no.
I'm gonna vote yes, but I just think it should be pointed out.
No, it's a valid point.
Okay.
I'll make the motion anyway.
Oh, all right.
I move that condition that there's a pre-construction meeting and with all parties, that we consider removing stumps and brush and grubbing, cutting of trees, and stripping and stockpiling of the topsoil, as well as the install and backfill of the bottom course for the bottom course of the retaining wall units, that they, how to phrase this, that they are acceptable and not considered significant for this project per the bylaws.
You may consider striking the word backfill just because it has multiple,
Okay,
it's ambiguous.
okay, so that.
We know what they're gonna do.
To strike back.
That for the installation of the bottom course of the retaining wall.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
alrighty.
Okay.
For clarification, Mark, did you suggest just the base course or the first course on top of that too?
Just the base.
Just the base course, okay.
I'll second it. Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
Nay.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye.
Okay, thank you. Now that we have a good understanding of what, you know, what constitutes substantial, and Mr. Bonthorn, I would present that if I were faced with another project, I would, that had this kind of work, I would, first of all, counsel them, as I will all my clients, that tree cutting, grubbing, the stripping of the stockpile, and potentially removing, structures above surface are the kind of work that is not regulated, but that anything more significant, we would be filing for a waiver for. I understand your point. I do appreciate the board's consideration, given the timing of all this and where we are today. But going forward, now it's easy for us to just say, okay, this list of things is deemed non-substantial. Anything beyond that, it's a waiver. So that way we will all be on the same page. Thank you for your
And on top
time.
of that, we would likely request that waiver during the subdivision
Makes sense.
approval hearing
Right.
process, so that
And
we all
Mark,
know when
yeah,
we can
that's right,
start and what
too.
we can do.
and Mark, certainly appreciate the research that you put into the bylaws. That was actually, some of the most insightful stuff I heard all evening, actually, to be honest. No, in terms of like interpretation of
He
the
actually
actual.
talked it, I thought about it, but you found him.
Don't let it go to his head.
And I guess with the way everything transpired tonight, regardless of what I said, it's still your interpretation that that regulation applies to any and all work.
Well, we might work on that on the off-season, get
Yeah,
that straightened
we have
out a little more.
We don't have any subdivisions in the near future.
To do the public hearings during the winter, so that by the summer, they're ready to start their work.
Your last item, Mr. Chair, the engineering department doesn't have any concerns with your endorsement. We can work in the fields in some orders to address the small, tiny things that the designer left open for us, but otherwise Cloverleaf is, we don't have any objections to your endorsement here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent, appreciate that, thank you.
we've always had a good working relationship with Paul and the engineering department.
I was gonna say that.
Thank you, Steve.
Have a good night and happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I guess, yeah, before we close that item out, Joe, it would be great if we can have it as a takeaway for this, an action item for the board to, I'm actually gonna go back and re-listen to the section where Mark was talking, kind of go through the path he was walking us through, because I didn't have time to follow that all in the documentation. I would be very curious town council's interpretation of how he sort of interpreted the different regulations, and whether they agree with his assessment or not.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I actually did some of that similar work, and I could put together a quick written analysis for you,
Yeah.
so that you could just hand it to
Yeah,
town
even just say
council.
because of this, look at this section of this,
Yeah,
regulation,
yeah.
and I'll read through all of it and see if I agree, but I'm actually.
Sure, give me an
I'm more
opportunity
inclined to
to
understand if
put
town
something
council
together
agrees
for
with
you.
that interpretation.
I'll get you a memorandum.
Asked for a
Great.
on this.
That's great, thank you.
All right, let's move on. General business, item E is consider a request to endorse the plans and execute covenant for 22 Griffin Road, Cloverleaf Field subdivision. Oh, okay, good evening.
Again, good evening, Douglas DeShane representing the applicant. I am hopeful that our engineers have submitted everything they were supposed to, although they did give me a bunch of hard copies to deliver. I know that I did provide a copy of the signed covenant, and I know I was asked to bring an extra copy, and I did bring an extra copy of the covenant for the wrong subdivision. But you do have the original signed and sealed, and I'd be happy to get you as many copies as you want. Did you want to have two original signed?
In the future, moving forward, it'd be great to.
Well, there's still no reason we couldn't do that. If the board's comfortable signing tonight, I'll just have my client sign another copy and get it over to you. You know, and they can sign a second copy at your meeting. Obviously, the original that gets signed, I have to, record at the Registry of Deeds so that I can put, the.
Can you pass it around so I can skim it, since it wasn't in our packet?
What covenant?
Yeah. Did we already sign it? No.
No.
Not in the packet.
I just look for typos and things, you know me.
Oh, well, what I've been doing, just to let you know, is once we went through the process of having town council review and approve the form of the covenant for, I don't know, whichever one we did last, maybe that was Diane Lane, and then when we did the next one, I used the exact same form, and that is the exact same form. Obviously, we changed the names, but I did send it to Joe for his review. He had some comments, pointed out a couple typos, and
Okay.
we went back and forth a couple of times, actually, making sure that all the typos were cleared, but
Okay, that's.
I do appreciate staff's reviewing those and making sure we didn't miss anything.
Okay, so that's nice to know it was this exact same.
Well,
wording.
It's the same, yeah, essentially the
Except
same
for the-
document,
except for
taking
the
out
project.
name of this subdivision for
Yeah.
Cloverleaf.
Okay.
And making sure the book and page references are in there, and names and dates of plans, revision dates.
I thought this, upon final completion of construction of all ways and the construction of all municipal services specified herein, within 4 years from the date of the division plan is endorsed by the planning board. I thought, we had thought that wasn't, that it should be or within 4 years or something like that. But that's the only thing. I thought we had had a discussion on that wording.
You guys.
Thanks, guys.
Paul?
It is what it is. Anybody else want to skim it?
No, that,
No?
it's been reviewed by engineering and
Yeah.
staff.
I just remember we questioned that language.
I think one of the earlier ones, there was a question on that paragraph, but that's the language that ultimately town council required.
Okay. Because it was unclear that it made it sound like it had to be done within 4 years, or what happens if it's done within less or something.
As I understand, that was the language that we were required to put in.
Okay.
That was changed.
Alrighty, I move that we endorse, that we endorse the plans for 22 Griffin Road, Cloverleaf Fields, and that we approve the covenant, approve and sign the covenant.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Darren?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And I say aye.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate all your work.
Sure.
Thanks, Doug.
Enjoy your night.
Yes,
I'll see you later at the football game.
that's right.
Maybe, yeah, let's hope all the good stuff
Good timing.
happens at the end.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. On to meeting minutes. The meeting minutes of November 1st, 2021 are in the packet. Is there a motion to approve the November 1st minutes from the planning board?
So,
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I just had one on page 2, lines 86, 87, just for clarity. It says, she noted that the language regarding the conveyance of deeds of the stormwater management permit general conditions of approval was not evidenced in the definitive subdivision. So after definitive subdivision, add general conditions of approval. And that was it.
Okay. Any other corrections or items to amend? Anyone else have any comments on the minutes?
Negative, I'm all set.
All set, Bob, anything?
No, that's good.
Okay. Motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
I'm sorry, as amended this evening?
As amended, yep.
With Kate's comments. Sorry. Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
aye.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye. Okay, we're done with minutes, correspondence, reports, and updates. I don't think there were any, but I went back to the beginning of the packet, so.
No.
There weren't any.
No.
There were not. All right, motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
I say aye. Good evening, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening.